Through.
Good morning and welcome to the hybrid virtual and in-person meeting of the Policy Committee. Sorry for the delay. We did have some technical issues, which we hope have been totally ironed out this morning. So the first thing we'll do is a Pledge of Allegiance here, and I guess here we can stand and then.
Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and with that, we'll have a roll call of committee members.
Commissioner Kemp,
Here.
Commissioner Cohen,
Here.
Commissioner Overman,
Here.
Joe Wagner, Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Paul Anderson or Charles Klug, Councilman Maniscalco,
Here.
and MPO Board Member Mayor Ross is in attendance.
Okay. I think we, and with that, we have a quorum, in-person quorum for this meeting. So with that, we can move to approval of the minutes since we have an in-person
So moved.
quorum.
Second. Maniscalco, second.
Okay. Commissioner Overman made the motion and Councilman Maniscalco seconded. And with that, can we have a roll call vote for approval of the minutes?
Commissioner Kemp,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Overman,
Yes.
Joe Wagner, Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. And we'll move now to our discussion, or I'm sorry, our public comment. Do we have public comment? Okay, we have no public comment listed. Okay. Okay, so we can move past that and move to straight off to our discussion items, Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP development process. And I don't know if you wanted to say anything, Ms. Alden, or just move right to Johnny Wong? Okay, MPO staff.
Yes, good morning, Policy Committee. I'm Johnny Wong, MPO staff, and I'm managing this year's update to the Transportation Improvement Program. We're running behind, so I'm going to be pretty quick. Today, I'm here to summarize the development process and provide you with a status update before turning it over to staff from the agencies to speak on their projects. Next slide, please. To begin, the Transportation Improvement Program also goes by TIP or TIP. I'm personally a fan of saying TIP because it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg of projects. Our long-range transportation plan covers a 25-year period, and because it covers so many years, it's difficult for it to go into detail on any specific projects. But the TIP covers only 5 years, and it gives us a lot of opportunity to provide more detail about individual projects. The TIP itself is composed of two main components. The first, it's a catalog of transportation projects that will receive funding within the next 5 years. And second, it's also a list of high priority projects that should receive funding next. So in a very rudimentary way, the TIP is just a document comprised of lists of projects. Next slide, please. The purpose that the TIP serves is to let the public know what projects will move forward in the next 5 years and also provide a transparent process to discuss how urgent needs of the community are being addressed through these projects. The TIP translates the long-range plan's big picture vision into a far more detailed 5-year plan. And it's also important to note that the TIP is a performance-based planning document. At the heart of the prioritization process is a lot of transportation data, methodologies, and analyses to rank projects in the fairest way possible. We take a lot of care to assess how these projects are addressing our needs for maintenance, safety, reliability, and so forth. And we prioritize the ones that are projected to have the biggest impact in those areas. When the TIP's adopted by the MPO board, it shows the state and federal agencies that our community supports our goals and that we believe the projects listed in the TIP will help us achieve them. And of course, finally, we update the TIP every year because the community's problems change and hence our priorities may also change. Next slide, please. Many of you are familiar with the TIP and already know that it's a document that's subject to a lot of federal and state requirements. The TIP has to include projects either with or seeking federal funding, projects requiring an action by the Federal Highway Administration or Federal Transit Administration, and regionally significant projects that are going to be funded in any way, federal or non-federal. I also want to note that to the right of this slide, I've included a screenshot of something we call the TIP tool. The TIP tool is a mapping application that was developed by our staff, and it's accessible on our website, so it makes it really easy for the public to go on and see what projects are listed in the TIP. You can search for projects either with the search bar in the upper left-hand corner. I typed in Lumsden just as an example. You can also click around, and if you click on one of the colored segments, you'll get info about what's funded and when, what phase of the project we're currently in. Next slide, please. We update the catalog of projects in the TIP pretty much on a continuous basis, but technically the process begins in winter. In winter, we receive a copy of FDOT's tentative work program, and funding for the work program is determined during the following spring as part of the state's budget process. While that's happening, we coordinate with local agencies to receive their latest capital improvement programs. We're not required to include that info in our TIP, but we do it as a convenience. And then we present that info to our committees and public at least 30 days before the adoption date so that they can review it and offer comments. Next slide, please. So that handles the catalog of projects. The second requirement for the TIP is to have a priority list. So to create that, we meet with local agencies and review the status of their previous year's priorities. And we also talk about priorities that haven't yet been funded. Shortly after that conversation takes place, the agencies give us a list of projects that they feel are priorities. Once we receive that list, we categorize each project into one of our 5 investment programs that are shown on this slide to the right. You're probably familiar with these because these are the basis of the long-range transportation plan. Once we put those priorities into one of the investment programs, we calculate performance, and then we rank the projects according to the adopted methodology. And then once we have all that info, we share the results with our committees and with the public and present that information to the board so that you all can make an informed decision prior to adopting the TIP. Next slide, please. In the past month or so, we met with the agencies to get the status updates and discuss their priorities. We've received all of their lists so far, and so now we're working on scoring all of the priorities that they submitted to us. A couple weeks ago, my team met with the CAC subcommittee to discuss ideas for redesigning the TIP so that it's simpler and easier to understand. Today, of course, is the policy workshop. Next week, we hope to have a rough draft of the new TIP ready so that we can begin showing it to our committees. And then based on their feedback, we'll clean that document up again before unveiling it to the public on May 9th. So from May 9th until the date of the MPO public hearing to adopt, we're going to take all of that feedback and collect it and then present it to board members, again, to help inform their decision-making process. Next slide, please. Once the TIP is adopted, we have to submit that to District 7 for review and approval, and then we coordinate our TIP with their work program. Once that's done, the FDOT secretary will approve all of the TIPs collected from MPOs throughout the state, as well as the statewide TIP, and submit those documents to FHWA before the entire process begins the following year. Next slide, please. I think that about wraps it up. I want it to be really short. I'm happy to field any questions before we turn it over to our staff from partner agencies to present the project.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments at this time before we? I don't see any, so maybe we can start with moving to the City of Plant City, or however you want to.
Madam Chair, may I introduce
Yes,
this
sure,
item?
of course, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you so much. So this is a really important time of year for us when we review our priority list, which is, as Johnny showed you, is one of the 2 components of the Transportation Improvement Program. The role of the MPO in this process is not as an implementing agency, we don't build anything. What we are trying to do is to position the projects of our local governments to compete as effectively and successfully as possible as they can for federal funding and for state funding. The couple of ways that we do that, one is by doing a lot of one-on-one meetings with the staff of each of the local agencies. Part of that is to make sure that the projects are eligible and that they are ready to go. So we're looking for projects, obviously that are of a high priority to each local government, that they're ready to advance, that they have all of the documentation pulled together so that that can be provided to the Department of Transportation to show that the projects are eligible so that dollars can be assigned to them. We are also trying to match up projects that are eligible in specific categories with the amount of funding that is available in those specific categories. So there's a bit of strategy to this, and some of it means that we do some back and forth with the local agencies about how to break larger projects into bite-sized chunks so that they can match up with the available funding streams. So there is a little bit of back and forth. This is sort of the beginning of our discussion of the new projects this year. This is an opportunity for you all to ask questions directly of the project proposers, the local governments, so that when we come to our adoption hearing in June, we'll all have a clear sense of where we're going next with our priority list. And so I'll ask each of our local agency representatives to speak briefly about their project requests this year. Copies of their letters are in your agenda packet. And we'll start off with the City of Plant City. And we'll have Mark Hudson, who is the executive planner with the Planning Commission assigned to the City of Plant City, address those projects for us. Mark?
Thank you, Beth. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, great. Again, Mark Hudson, Planning Commission staff. First, I'd just like to convey the apologies of Plant City staff. They would like to be here this morning, but they had a conflict, and they asked me to stand in for them. Just to give you a little idea, the letter that has been supplied to Beth that she's already referenced, Plant City has requested assistance for 9 transportation projects. And I want to let you know that 8 of those have been part of previous submittals. So there is only one new project that is coming forth. That's a new project. The previous 8 in past submittals. The new project is called the Connector Trail Feasibility Plan. And it's the city's desire to use existing lands that they own to connect many of the parks that are located in North Plant City and Central Plant City with a bike and walking trail. And this was a result of some work the MPO did for us back in 2017 when they helped the city develop a Plant City walk and bike master plan for the municipality. And they would like to see that further implement some of those recommendations. Other projects that were submitted in previous years include 3 intersection improvements that are being proposed to improve not only traffic flow but safety. 2 of those are on Alexander Street and 1 is South Park Road. There's also 2 major sidewalk projects that are to improve the walking conditions around 2 middle schools in Plant City, Marshall and Tomlin. The MPO also did with that study, the Plant City Walk and Bike Master Plan recommended these improvements around these schools back in 2017. There are 2 requests for assistance dealing with developing PD&E studies for new roadway facilities. One is East Sam Allen Road and the other one is Rice Road. The Rice Road is to serve southern Plant City, where Sam Allen Road is to serve areas in northeast Plant City, where the city is currently expanding. These were to build on some analysis the MPO provided Plant City staff in previous year with their roadway extension study for Plant City, again back in 2017. And this would be the next step in those facilities. And finally, the last project is to look at expanding US 92 from South Park Road to South County Line Road from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And we did some work back in 2016 with a freight logistics study that their staff conducted for all Hillsborough County, but this, of course, was specifically related to Plant City. And this was a recommended improvement that came out of that analysis. The 9 projects that the city is requesting assistance, I'd be happy to try to respond to any questions you may have on these. And of course, if I'm not as familiar enough with them to respond, I will convey your questions to Plant City staff and they'll be prepared to respond to those at your regular meeting when this topic comes up. And with that, I'll just close and see if there's any questions.
Any questions for Mark? Okay, our next guest is Vic Beda with the City of Tampa.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. This is Vic Bede, City of Tampa. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Great, thank you. And thank you again for the opportunity to present some of our projects that we're proposing for the TIP. I'd like to start off by thanking Hillsborough MPO and Beth and her team. They're always great to work with, and special shout out to Johnny. I know his workload is especially high. The MPO has always helped us fund a lot of projects, including Sulphur Springs, Gulf Carlton, Green Spine Cycle Track, and more. This year, I'll be highlighting a couple of the projects that we're requesting for funding, but also some that are more illustrative and led by other agencies that we also would like to share our support for. So under the Safety and Vision Zero category, we have Inner Bay Boulevard from West Shore to Bay Shore. This is a south of Gandy project. We're requesting around $4.5 million for construction. And we are partnering with FDOT to go through preliminary design and project development. That's currently underway, funded by the city, and we're partnering with FDOT on that. This 3-mile corridor is really critical. It provides connectivity to the Air Force Base. It is part of a coastal high hazard area, so there are special considerations around stormwater and resilience. And it is a much needed east-west connector and upgrade, including a trail for the south of Gandy community. It also interfaces with other projects that we're working on in the area, so it builds upon the entire experience from a mobility standpoint. The other project is Twig Street. This is downtown from Ashley to Nebraska. This is one of the roads, as you're likely aware, that goes all the way from the river to the channel and is a critical connector. The request here for construction is about $3 million. Design is currently underway. And both this and the previous project are likely familiar because they were on our IOC surtax plan as well. The next few Vision Zero projects are more illustrative and we support them. One is a new signal at Adamo and 26. This is by IKEA and Coppertail on Adamo. A rapidly growing area, densifying. This was a request from YCDC to FDOT, and we're partnering with FDOT and co-funding the traffic signal. The other signal request is at Boy Scout in Manhattan. Again, similar circumstances, welcome problems of growth, if you will, and this will add much needed safety improvements along Boy Scout in that segment. Then there's Brush Street from Whiting to Kennedy. This is, again, an illustrative project. It's intersection and corridor safety. This is also the project that will be a logical extension to Water Street and what's happening in South Downtown, and create a north-south connection via Brush Street all the way to West Ybor and that area. And the goal is to continue the experience, continue on our vision to regrid that part of downtown and connect Channel District with the downtown grid. We're working with multiple agency partners on that. and of course, to calm the entire neighborhood in that area by offering lower speed but multimodal options that are conducive to economic development as well. We're defining the project, but I did wanted to highlight this as an early priority. The other is West Shore Boulevard and intersection improvements from Fair Oaks to Neptune. Again, at this point, we're not requesting any funding, but we would like to reflect our support on this. And the reason we're not requesting funding is this is a county road, and in our letter to Hillsborough County, an annual letter we submit for projects, we have requested the county to consider this. This is also a request from the community in the area. Under real choices when not driving, we're supporting the Tampa Streetcar Extension Phase 4 feasibility study. This is basically a feasibility study of what next with the current project. Now, this is very early. We're not seeking any kind of funding. And more importantly, we're working with our partners at HART to see if there is an appropriate next step on this project. And we'd be happy to have HART take the lead if that makes sense. The other is Ashley Drive from Tyler to Laurel Street. This is a north downtown grid multimodal improvements. We've recently conducted some community outreach on this as well. This is a goals with project with FDOT's West Shore Interchange project. The requested funding amount is about $5.2 million. FDOT, of course, is augmenting with another $10.5 million in the overall improvement. So the gist of this project is today at Tyler and Ashley, just north of there, we have a ramp that gets onto 275. We also have an off ramp. And that whole area between the interstate and Tyler, which is about 4 blocks, is elevated. And it disconnects the eastern part of North Downtown from the river and the Riverwalk and some of the cultural activities. The other thing also, and those east-west routes are Laurel and Harrison and a few others. So this project will bring a lot of that vertical infrastructure down to ground level, create 3 additional blocks in downtown Tampa along Ashley by the interstate, improve connectivity between transit and the river across Ashley, and create almost a gateway area. And the city's vision is with some of the land that we can replat and create parcels for, is to add affordable housing and more walkability and bikeability in that whole area. Again, this is a project that we're working with the MPO and partnering with the FDOT on as well. We have a Goes With project for that as well, and that's Ashley Drive from Kennedy to Tyler. This is the southern portion of Ashley, and we believe with the improvements that we make in the north, and kind of sharing traffic even more between Tampa and Ashley and reducing some southbound traffic on Ashley, we'll be able to accommodate more multimodal options along Ashley Drive. As you're likely aware, with everything that's going on in Ashley, there's a lot of bike ped activity, and we don't have very safe bicycle connectivity along that segment. And then we're also supporting Rio Street improvements at the State Road 60 interchange. And this is Rio from Gray Street to Cypress. It's a small section. And we're partnering with FDOT on this. The goal here is to, one, provide a separate walk bike facility along the west side of Rio, which will extend out along the intersection footprint of the interchange and connect to parks facilities via the new bridge in Pinellas County. So this is critical from a recreation and parks and alternative standpoint, but it also builds upon FDOT vision for the West Shore interchange. We're partnering with them on the same as well. And then we'd like to highlight the Build Grant project. Currently, we've got an awkward name for it, Tampa Multimodal Network and Safety Improvement. It's basically the West River Walk extension, and it will complement the River Walk on the east side. And we provide connections across bridges as well, like Marine Bridge, Cass Bridge, and all of that, to the new Riverwalk segment in front of Tampa Prep, West River, all the way up to Columbus. Happy to share any of the details on that. Major projects for economic growth. Under that, we are supporting the downtown streetcar extension and modernization. Phase 3 of that, of course, and the design phase will continue through this year as we figure out future funding opportunities, but that is an ongoing effort, of course. And then major regional trails, we're supporting the South Tampa Greenway. This is also a South of Gandy project from Picnic Island Park to Manhattan Avenue. Again, Picnic Island is a Tampa gem that is, in my opinion, underutilized. It's a beautiful park. And this just brings that Inner Bay project and assets within the South of Gandy area better connected for quality of life, but also mobility. South of Gandy has limited options. And finally, for the UPWP, or the Unified Planning Work Program, we're supporting and prioritizing a study or a feasibility study for deploying advanced parking management systems in Tampa's urban core, mainly downtown and the areas around it. And the goal here is really to bring parking into the overall mobility management fold by connecting what happens in parking facilities to what happens in the street, and then also converting parking facilities into more multimodal type of hubs by offering digital connections to first mile, last mile options from garages. Our overall strategy here is, as we transition to more alternatives to driving, we want to start with where people are today in Tampa, and most of us drive to get around. So this will help with that transition. And with that, I'm available for any questions as needed. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Vic. Any questions for Vic?
Vic, thanks very much. You have a tremendous amount that you're working on right now, and a lot of this are things I remember from my time with the city of Tampa. And I wanted to ask you specifically about Inner Bay, because from what you said, you're going all the way from West Shore to Bay Shore, which means you're doing the entire length of the road, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So is this a full Vision Zero treatment? Or are you doing sidewalks and bike lanes? And I know there's some ditches along the side of it that might be sort of precarious to get around. What exactly are you going to be able to do?
So as part of our project development, we're looking at everything. The vision is our Parks Department has in their master plan a trail facility identified along parts of this route. There are intersection improvements that are much needed to improve traffic flow in the region. So we're going to look at that as well. We're not looking at adding segment capacity as much as intersection capacity, again, for better flow. Every corridor project that we do is looked at from a Vision Zero lens for pedestrian and bicycle safety, and we've also started considering how micromobility will operate on some of these streets. So we have brick streets, there are considerations for that as well. So we're really looking at it holistically. And of course, there are stormwater challenges along this entire corridor with ditches. So we'll take a look at that as well and weigh that with opportunities to either fill the ditches and create more room for multimodal transport, or preserve the ditches when we can, because they do help with water quality as well. And I hope that answers it.
And when do you expect that project to actually take place and be completed?
So our project development is underway right now. It'll take about a year. That will give us about 30% design. The next step after that is to go to 100% design, if funded, and then to construction. So we're looking at, about 5 years for the whole construction to be done, starting where we are at today.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, any other questions for Vic? Okay, thank you so much. From the city of Temple Terrace, I believe we have Celeste Lau joining us.
Hi, good morning. This is Celeste Lau, planner with the City of Temple Terrace. I'm sort of stepping in for Amir Anisi, which is the Community Development Director, as well as Troy Finch, Public Works Director of Utilities. They're both in conferences this week, so I do my best to summarize the priority projects the city has this year. Hopefully, if you have any, questions about it, I will do my best to answer them. But this year, the city is requesting 6 projects to be federally funded. So I'll try to go through and summarize each of them fairly quickly because I know we still have presenters after me. So the first priority project we have is the Bypass Canal Trail, which is a trail going from Flatwoods Park all the way to downtown Tampa, I believe. Staff believes it's a great project, and we would like to support that in hopes of our other priority projects maybe possibly connecting to it. The second priority is a Bullard Parkway / Temple Terrace Highway complete streets project going from those streets to Glen Arvin Avenue and to 78th Street. Again, it's a complete streets project, so we'd like to see that get funded. We also have Davis Road from Morris Bridge to Temple Terrace Highway, which includes sidewalk and bicycle lane improvements, as well as repairs of existing sidewalks. Our fourth priority project is a PD&E for the evaluation of a subsurface crossing or underpass at the Fowler Avenue and Braintree Boulevard intersection. We also have along Whiteway Drive, we're hoping to have a light vehicle and footbridge over the Hillsborough River. And that's sort of areas where Whiteway Drive meets River Hills Drive, and it's a footbridge over the Hillsborough River. And then the last project we have is a mobility fee study. And really the city is just requesting an evaluation of our mobility fee to ensure that it's adequately reflecting, proposed improvements to our transportation infrastructure, as well as just sort of making sure that, our mobility fee reflects what the county has and that everything is consistent. Those are the city's 6 projects that we are requesting funding for this year. Again, I kept it pretty brief because I know we have a couple of other presenters behind us, but I'm here to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Celeste. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to Hart, and Cheryl, if you could cue up the slides for Hart. I believe that'll be Chris Cochran speaking.
Yes. You can go ahead and just move forward to the 3rd slide there. We'll move this ahead quickly. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. We have the list of projects here are actually all of the same projects that the MPO saw last year. We have no new projects on this list. We have, however, rearranged our priorities of these projects. I do want to point out at the bottom, the light shaded blue ones we are removing from the list. So the automated vehicle facilities and infrastructure is coming off of the list. That is due to a decision by the board to for it just simply not being a priority at this point in time. That may be something that the board may decide to revisit down the road. The CNG compressor is coming off because that was actually funded. That was a success for us out of the TIP program. We're happy to say that was funded and installed. The fiber optic ring between the jurisdictions, that is a project at this point in time. We know the city and the county are putting in new traffic management systems, and we wanted to put that on hold to get a better understanding of what that technology is going to be, if what we have, if what we need is appropriate to tap into all of those new systems. So we have pulled that from the list for this year. So primarily the three most important projects we have going on right now. Previously, bus replacements have traditionally been our #1 priority, and the heavy maintenance building has been #2. We have flipped those priorities at this point in time. The heavy maintenance building has just really become a absolute top priority for the agency at this point in time. It's something we really need to address, and we are, our new CEO, Ms. LeGrand, is working diligently to explore all options and finding funding to be able to do this. Obviously, this is a very large number. We understand that out of the TIP, we would not likely get the amount of money to be able to fund that, but any kind of money to go towards it would be helpful. Bus replacements, out of here, we do normally get money relatively consistently for this. This will, we do have money in the work plan for the next 5 years towards bus replacements, but we do ask for money every year. We continue that. The CAD ABL replacement system, this is pretty much everything associated with ITS, our real-time systems, cameras, all of that technology stuff that works with the communications between our operations, the public, et cetera. That was actually a $10.2 million project. We have been awarded $5.2 million of it, and we are still asking for the $5 million of it. A satellite maintenance facility, that would be something that would be needed in conjunction with the HM building. If the HM building were to be built when it's demolished, we do need a place, we do need a satellite facility in place to be able to, we will need a satellite facility in place to be able to house our operations while that is going on. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. The next one is our electric bus, the Tampa Arterial BRT. We are currently working on this BRT project. We are about halfway through that project at this point in time. Out of that, we are hoping to have about 15 to 20% engineering plans out of that, and the $30 million will go towards either once the board decides whether they want to go into the Small Starts program or use some funding for some smaller safety and operational improvements in the corridor of Florida Avenue and Fowler Avenue that would ultimately work towards a long-term BRT solution in that corridor. The electric bus infrastructure, we have come a long way here in really making electric electric buses a priority at this point in time. We will have our first electric buses, 4 of them coming in next year, and they will be up and operational by the end of 2022. We do have the expectations to continue ordering an electric bus fleet, and with that, we will obviously need electric bus infrastructure to be able to run that. A CSX study, this is a long time coming here. This would really be a kind of redo of an older CSX study. The previous SEIS study has been done, but it's too old. It's out of date at this point in time. Another one would have to be done, and we would look at the corridor of CSX between USF and the port likely. Bus stop capital improvements. These are amenities associated with ADA improvements, bus shelters, anything associated with bus stop amenities that will make safety and comfort for our customers while they are waiting for the buses. Scheduling software. This is a critical piece of IT infrastructure that we use. Pretty self-explanatory there. That we use in maintaining our schedules that go into allowing our operators to pick and choose their pieces of work. The modern streetcars, this is part of the existing city project. Eventually that project, it would be expected that the city and Hart will partner on this, and the expectation would be once sort of the governance pieces are all worked out, the expectation would be that Hart really, it would make sense in Hart's role of the modern streetcar to take on the procurement of the new streetcars and some of the procurement of facilities, since we have much more experience with that piece there, and the city would be likely more responsible for some of the construction on the tracks and that sort of thing. Real estate acquisition, that is for looking for new transfer centers and locating and acquiring new transfer centers and property throughout the county for any expansion in the future. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions. I hope I didn't go too fast.
Any questions for Chris?
I don't have any questions.
Pardon my dog. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, Chair. May I ask a question concerning the streetcars? Joseph Citro, Tampa City Council, for the record. The modern streetcars I'm liking, but there is some concern about the older vintage streetcars, and of course the housing that is in Ybor City to either repair or store those cars. How will that fit in with the new style of streetcars that are proposed? Is there enough room in that housing in Ybor City to store the modern streetcars and the vintage streetcars?
No, there is not, so the as of now, as I understand it, the historic streetcars would go away and be completely replaced by the modern streetcars, and there would need to be modifications to the current Ybor facility. In terms of, it's literally like a foot too short for the modern size streetcars. So there would have to be some expansion of the building, but we do have room on that property. It's actually the city's property, to be able to expand that building.
All right, I'm not going to mention names, but there were some people within the mobility department in the city of Tampa that saying that they were going to at least keep some of the vintage streetcars, at least for novelty.
Yes, I think that, yes, sir. They likely will keep a couple. You're right. Yes.
Okay, is the rebuilding of that storage facility, repair facility, you said there's enough room. However, will it interfere with any type of traffic, whether it be pedestrian, bike, and/or automobile?
I would have to get back with you on that, sir. I would need to get in touch with the project with Milton Martinez at the city and have him help answer that detail of question.
I thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Alden.
Any other questions for Chris about the HART projects? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chris. We have a brief presentation now from Alex Henry with the Department of Transportation. You heard Chris mention the HART Arterial BRT project. The District 7 office is working on some street improvements that will complement that project. And Alex, if you could speak about that kind of briefly as we are running low on time. You might be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So sorry about that, and thank you so much for the opportunity to present this morning. As Beth mentioned, we put together some slides kind of detailing what we've done so far with the Heights Mobility Study and some of the projects that have come out of it and are reflected in the TIP. I will go quickly through some of the background information that we provided and spend the majority of the focus on some of the shorter term and longer term projects that we have coming out of this effort. Next slide. Just a little bit of background about what we have, kind of how we got to this point. A couple years back, we did a pretty extensive public engagement effort that included 3 neighborhood workshops, neighborhood walking audits with several of the neighborhood associations, as well as presentations to those individual groups, tabling events, outreach surveys, and an online wiki mapping tool that allowed people in the community to identify spot-specific safety issues that they thought that we should take a look at and address as part of this project. Next slide. This is just a little bit of a summary of what we heard and how that helps inform some of the projects and improvements that we've developed out of this. Kind of just to briefly summarize the public feedback we heard, the major themes were better walk and bike facilities, wider sidewalks, better options for cyclists, as well as more pedestrian crossings across Tampa, Florida, the 2 key corridors that we were evaluating, more transit options along the corridor, and traffic calming to help reduce speeds as well. So, and all of those different public involvement outlets that we conducted, those were kind of the main themes that kept coming back and have really been the focus of the recommendations that we've been developing as part of the Heights Mobility effort. Next slide. I'll touch briefly on some of the short-term improvements that we have programmed and are working on advancing ahead of our long-term alternatives. The first of which are pedestrian crossings. As I just mentioned, this was something that came up several times throughout our outreach and something that we definitely identified as being a need along the corridor. So this is a look of the pedestrian crossings that we currently have programmed as standalone projects. Some of them, such as the new signalized intersections at Florida and Idlewood and Florida Knollwood, are reflected in the TIP. Others we have are working on implementing through alternative delivery methods. Locations such as Florida and Wilder and Tampa at 7th, we're partnering with the City of Tampa to advance construction on those. And others such as Florida and Giddens, we are working with our traffic operations office to use their fast response designed with push button contracts to get those out even quicker. So the locations that we pilot in green are ones that we have constructed to date, and the other ones are programmed and at various stages in the project development process. So even as, and I think I skipped over this in the first slide, the focus of the study has really been on the Florida Avenue and Tampa Street corridors. We did look at the greater Heights area as a whole. And as part of that effort, we were able to identify some improvements to enhance crossings along Nebraska Avenue as well. including at Idlewild Avenue, where the Publix is, where we've gotten several requests from citizens and our local partners to look at a crossing there. Next slide. Another shorter term project that is currently reflected in the TIP are two bicycle boulevard projects along city streets, Ola Avenue and Central Avenue. These two streets run parallel to our key Florida Avenue and Tampa Street corridors, and are currently being used by many as the community, we found out during our public outreach, as kind of parallel bicycle routes to the Tampa Street and Florida Avenue corridor. So working with the City of Tampa, we have developed and programmed these two projects to improve those bicycle routes that folks in the community are already using, looking at things like new and improved crossings at some of the major intersections such as MLK, Columbus, and Palm, as well as enhanced wayfinding and traffic calming to help provide another option for folks traveling throughout the Heights and downtown on bicycles. Next slide. And then finally, another short-term improvement that we have implemented that you may have noticed if you've driven on Highland Avenue, the section between VIII and MLK in the last year or two. We have worked with our traffic operations office to kind of advance a pilot lane repurposing, where we have installed some striping and some bollards to eliminate one of the three travel lanes along the segment of Highland to address a safety issue that we had with cars failing to negotiate the curb at Violet and running into houses along the corridor. So we kind of used this as a proof of concept for some of the other improvements that we're looking at on other segments of Florida and Tampa. And some of the preliminary results that we've seen as part of this have been pretty promising. We've seen a reduction of those curve-related crashes, as well as an 18% reduction in travel speeds in conjunction with this shorter-term improvement. Next slide. Next slide, please.
It's loading. Alex, do you want to go ahead and describe what's on the next slide while it loads?
Yeah, sure thing. Let me pull it up here. So as others have mentioned, Milton and Hart as well, there are a couple of other, Vic and Chris had mentioned, there are a couple of other parallel study efforts that are going along the corridor. The Tampa streetcar extension overlaps with our study up to Palm. So we are coordinating with the city Tampa streetcar extension team to ensure that our concepts for that area are consistent with what they're proposing, as well as the Hart Arterial BRT study, which runs the entire length of our study corridor. Prior to, after we kicked off the study, the Hart Arterial BRT study identified the Florida and Tampa corridor as their preferred corridor for their BRT alignment, and their concepts are recommending an exclusive BRT lane on Tampa, Florida. So we've been coordinating very closely with that effort to ensure that any long-term concepts that come out of this study are consistent and supportive of those concepts, as well as excuse me. So the majority of that focus and coordination has been occurring on the one-way section of Tampa, Florida, south of MLK, and we've been coordinating with them, waiting for the second phase of their evaluation, which is going to take a closer look at the two-way section of Florida Avenue north of Violet. So we've kind of put pause on our efforts in evaluating longer-term concepts for the two-way section, waiting for Hart to get a little bit further along with their concepts for that segment. Just with the understanding that we want whatever we recommend to be consistent with their concepts and not in conflict. Next slide. So with that in mind, we have spent the last year or so developing longer-term alternatives for the corridor and looking at things such as safety, compatibility with some of those parallel study efforts that we talked about, as well as some of the feedback that we got from the public engagement, as well as general pedestrian, bicycle, transit, and automobile accessibility, to develop some long-term alternatives of what we feel the Tampa, Florida street corridors could look like in the future. Next slide. So with all that in mind, this is kind of a look at what that long-term preferred alternative would look like for the Tampa, Florida corridor from our southern limit at Tyler up to MLK Boulevard. So essentially what we're proposing is working with the city and HART to go through our lane repurposing process to reallocate one of the 3 travel lanes, both on Tampa and Florida, to replace the general purpose lane with an exclusive transit lane. That would be consistent with HART's arterial BRT efforts. In order to improve the bicycle and pedestrian experience along the corridor, we're looking at pulling out the curb, replacing the on-street bike lane with a wide 10-foot sidewalk on the Florida Avenue corridor and a multi-use path on the Highland Avenue and Tampa Street corridor, in coordination with those 2 parallel bicycle boulevard projects on Ola Avenue and Central to help accommodate the cyclist, as well as looking at some traffic calming and safety strategies, including increasing the number of pedestrian crossings along the corridor. As I mentioned, we've already programmed several of those projects through standalone efforts. However, there are still locations along both Tampa and Florida where we still have gaps in between the available crossings, and also we're coordinating with HART on their future BRT stations to ensure that they're close by to safe and protected crossings, as well as looking at making geometric improvements to the signalized intersections to bulb out the curbs, shorten pedestrian crossing distance, and reduce conflicts there as well. In coordination with pulling out the curb to provide the wider sidewalk and multi-use path, we feel that it would be a good opportunity as we're rebuilding the curb to look at what we can do to address some of the drainage along the corridor. Anyone who's driven down Florida Avenue or Tampa Street after a rain event has likely noticed that there can be some pretty significant ponding in the outside lane that can cause a variety of operational and safety issues, as well as it kind of deteriorates the pedestrian experience as well. So, as someone who's as
Wall
someone
of
who's
water,
as someone who has been splashed walking along Florida Avenue, I can attest. I've taken the bath. So again, just as part of us digging up the curb, we feel that it would be a good opportunity to address some of those concerns. However, one of the drawbacks of doing that is that it really, both the drainage improvements and the cost of the additional roadway reconstruction project, and the additional cost of roadway reconstruction that would be triggered by these new drainage improvements does really increase our costs pretty significantly. So with this option, we would be looking about a $40 million price tag to do these corridor and drainage improvements up to Tyler to MLK, which is a little bit outside of what we can typically fund using our normal funding mechanisms without kind of dividing the project into several very small segments. However, we are actively pursuing federal grants to help fund some of this, including formerly it was a federal build grant. As of yesterday, it was rebranded as a RAISE grant, which we are actively pursuing to help achieve this kind of long-term ultimate condition with the full drainage and the corridor reconstructions as well. Also, as we learn more about the potential for federal stimulus coming out of some of the recent COVID impact bills and potential future infrastructure bills, this project is very much in the conversation, as well as projects we're looking to potentially advance as part of that. Next slide. So the next concept is very similar to what was previously stated, with the main exception being that it does not include the drainage improvements. So again, we would be widening out the sidewalk, pulling out the curb to provide a wide sidewalk and a multi-use path, looking at a lane repurposing to accommodate transit and the same traffic and safety calming improvements. The only difference being here that we would not be, there would be some incidental drainage caused just by having to match up the inlets when we pull in the curb. However, we would not be rebuilding the drainage system and addressing some of those current flooding concerns. So that does pretty significantly reduce the cost on the $20 million from Tyler to MLK. And this is reflective of what is currently programmed in the work program today. Next slide. So due to the still relatively high price tag for that concept, we've been coordinating with MPO staff to look at what we could do as potentially a more interim option to accommodate a lot of the same goals, while kind of reducing the costs and making it a little bit easier to fund. So this is kind of a preliminary concept that we're still working on developing more detailed estimates and coordinating what the typical section would look like a little bit more with our partners at HART and the City of Tampa. But essentially, this would be a scaled back interim option where we would maintain the curb line. So we would not be pulling out the curb to provide the wider sidewalk of the shared use facilities. However, we still could look at doing a lane repurposing that would be pavement marking only to provide that specific lane for transit. And we still could advance a lot of those site-specific safety improvements that we talked about, including new pedestrian crossings and intersection improvements, which would further reduce the cost to about $10 million, which is a little bit easier to digest in one project as well. Next slide. So as far as next steps, we are planning on conducting our next round of public engagement in coordination with our partners at the City of Tampa and HART to show these concepts in a little more detail to the public. We'll be doing another round of MPO committee presentations as well to share this information in a little bit more of a detailed fashion, as well as going back out to the communities, presenting to the neighborhood associations, and holding an online workshop to show these longer term concepts as well. All that feedback that we get will feed into the FDOT's lane repurposing process, which is the process by which we take a look at all of the various traffic analysis, safety data, public outreach that we have gathered as part of the study, and put that through the formal process by which FDOT determines whether or not to repurpose the travel lane for another use. As I mentioned, we're also in the process of pursuing a federal RAISE grant, formerly a BUILD grant, for the first segment, likely from our southern limit of Tyler up to Palm, to accomplish that full ultimate build out that would include the drainage improvements as well as the multimodal improvements that we have discussed. And we are continuing coordination with the HART BRT study, not just on the alternatives of the one-way pair, but as their PD&E gets a little further along and continues to look at the segment on the two-way sections to the north, we'll be coordinating with those and developing longer-term concepts that are consistent with the BRT concepts for that segment as well. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
I think two commissioners I know would like to really talk about this. I'll just say, great that we had all this now. It just doesn't seem like this is the place for all this detail, because I know we have to get to the county still. And there's a lot that I'd like to say about this. And so I wondered about it being broken out into a future presentation by itself. At least for me, it's incredibly significant, and I've looked at the road for both of them for 30 years with a lot of detail. But I'll let Commissioner Overman go first.
And I appreciate your comments, thank you, because I would like to see an update on this particular work. Alex, it's very good to see you again. It's been many years since I had to walk up and down Florida Avenue with a hard hat and a yellow vest on in order to tour Florida Avenue to determine how wonderfully safe it was. But I would like to get a timeline on Wilder, Idlewild, Giddens, and Knollwood. Idlewild, I've been told, will be done this year for the last 6 years, so I'm trying to figure out when this year starts. Idlewild and Knollwood have been on the list for at least 4 years. Giddens, I know, at least 3 years. So I'm really curious about when we say it's going to get done, and it's still on the list, and I don't see any progress. I'm trying to figure out where we are with this. And because these 4 intersections are critically important in working in the HART TOD study, or the arterial body, they are a critical element of that study. I think it's very important for us to figure out a way to best coordinate those projects and move those intersections along. So, and I'll stop there, but I would like to get an update on that particular project, since it's been multiple years since we've sat down and talked about those things. So thank you very much.
And I'll just add this, and I'll try and be fast about this, but I do really want a longer discussion of this because I've just watched it forever, and it's good that the protection was put in there to where the homes were getting hit, porches, and I don't know why that started. I mean, it was always at the one, speed, but I mean, it got really much worse. And the one house has just been hit forever, probably ever since they converted this to one way in the 50s. But just in general, I'm still very frustrated with the no-go on the two ways. From what I hear, there is nothing that could make that area safer than to turn one of those lanes into a two-way. There's absolutely, it's the biggest waste of asphalt from Seminole Heights on Tampa Street going to downtown because no one uses it, even in the mornings. It is unused pavement. It's just a speedway. And so to have one lane go north and actually deal with what we have as a capacity problem with an underused intersection at Highland and Hillsborough, where it's preciously needed. It's just to me. And the other thing is this same on Florida Avenue. I think just the one way going the opposite way, just one street. It's not used in the morning either. Of course, it's one way. But in the afternoon, it's basically unused but for the 2 hours from 4 to 6, and only in the block that is Florida Avenue headed north between MLK and Hillsborough. After that intersection, there's not a problem. Sometimes there's two lights at that intersection, but that is the only capacity issue that has. The other thing is put in bus lanes, whatever, paint it, whatever, but there's no problem for the buses to get through, except in the evenings at that one intersection where it's a problem for everybody. Other than that, there's you could set aside a bus lane, but it's just just totally unneeded because there's no problem getting through anywhere. So I just wanted to throw that in for the record at this point, but I really like a longer discussion, and I do appreciate that, that there is some safety for bicycles now and for people's homes that have been put in, and I consider it like an emergency basis for the next couple years. So that's good. But I just think we need a further discussion. I know we already don't have time for the county program, but anyway, I don't think anybody else wants to comment, so we could maybe move on.
Sure, we'll schedule some time with you to make sure that you get the answers to your questions. The purpose for bringing forward this today is to talk about the staging of this project and the TIP, and in particular, focusing on getting funding allocated to those critically needed safety improvements.
I understand. I just...
Let's get it done.
So from Hillsborough County staff, we have John Patrick joining us. John?
So yeah, I know we don't have a whole lot of time, so I will make this really, really quickly. Just 2 slides. We are bringing forward 5 projects that has been approved by our board back in March. These are the 5 projects that you see on the screen. 3 of them are already on the TIP. It is a reaffirmation that these are still our priority. It has not been funded. That is Balm Road, South Coast Greenway Trail, and a truck route study that we are asking for. These are still unfunded. It has been in the TIP and the UP, and has been asked for being in the UPWP. So those are the 3 projects, 3, 4, and 5. The 2 new projects that we are adding, we are asking MPO to add to the TIP priority list is the number 1, Big Bend Road. Big Bend Road and Gibson Drive. For those of us who are not familiar with South County, here is, and I will describe to you these projects on a map, which will be easier. This is South County, South Hillsborough County. We have We are the first project that is a top priority for us right now is Big Bend Road. As you know, DOT is working on the interchange. We are working with the DOT and the MPO. We secured funds through the federal grant, build grant, and also we have local monies involved in it. So we are working on this interchange. So the request right now is for the bookends. These are right now funded, funded for construction is moving along. We are requesting funding for those bookend projects from DOT so that we can leverage more of the federal and state funding. So that's the first project. The second project is Gibsonton Drive. DOT, working with DOT and the MPO, we have secured funds for design of the Gibsonton Drive interchange, and we anticipate that will be funded, and if there is any stimulus money, we will go after that interchange, which is badly needed at this point of time from the traffic perspective in South County. While doing that interchange, it is important to also widen Gibsonton Drive because the traffic that is getting off and on the interchange are mostly going east towards Fishhawk and other places in South County. So that is important to do capacity improvements on Gibsonton Drive. So we are working with the DOT and the MPO to synchronize these projects in terms of funding so that it can be built at the same time and not come back after the interchange is done. That doesn't work in terms of the traffic pattern. So these are the two big projects. The project that already was on the list and is on the list is Baum Road project from 301, US 301, number 3, US 301 to Clement Pride Road in the east. As some of you know, that there is this high school that has been built, and the need for this road widening is necessitated by that high school, and of course the development in that area. So that is the third project that we are requesting fund prioritization, and we will be applying for state funding through grants. The other project that we are excited about is, and moving forward, is the South County Greenway Trail. This is part of the larger Sun Trail system, the DOT system. So we are looking for doing a PD&E, full-blown PD&E study and design of it in anticipation for federal and state funding that would be available in the coming years. So we are setting ourselves for that funding. The last one is the truck route plan, Hillsborough County truck route plan. This was done quite some time back. There has been new roads built around the county, and a lot of opinions and complaints we have received from residents on the truck route as well. So we would like to study this in conjunction with the MPO and come up with a truck route plan that may be new or modify our truck route plan as needed. So those are the 5 projects that we have selected. This was approved by our board on March 3rd. Subsequent to that, we had received a request for adding a few more projects which are vital. I think we are vital for the county. Unfortunately, there are some concerns from a couple of our board members, and they want more information on it. So we are working through that, and hopefully we can bring that to our board. If our board members want and approve it, we will bring it to the MPO at a later stage. But these are the 5 projects that we are asking at this point of time. With that, I will stop. If you have any questions, I don't want to take too much of your time.
Okay, questions for John Patrick? Okay, thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
And do we have any projects coming forward from the Expressway Authority this year? I believe we have Bob Fry on the line to answer that question.
Sure, Beth. No, actually, we do not have any funding requests from the MPO at this time. And due to save time, I was going to give an overview of some of the other projects we have going on, but I'll defer to a different time based on to get us out here on time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for that presentation, thorough presentation, and appreciate it. And with that, we will move to the, we're not going to do the work program at this time, correct, or are we? No?
So this would be just some brief remarks from, I believe we have Secretary Gwynn on the line to
Sure.
just let us know how we're looking in terms of getting funding this year available for our projects.
That'd be great. Thanks.
We can't hear you. We still can't hear you guys.
All right, can you hear us now?
Now we
Yes,
can hear
we
you.
can. We want to know
Sorry
about the
about that.
money.
Yeah, this is Richard Moss. Secretary Gwynn is in Tallahassee with the executive conference up there. You know, as far as the funding goes, this year, it looks like in the legislative budgets, FDOT is getting about $10.5 billion on each of the Senate and the House. We've gotten a little extra money from the Relief Acts to supplement that. There, I think there was $470 million that came to the state. 89 of that went to the local MPOs, with about 17 million coming to Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco counties. So that's going to be distributed. It's being boxed in fiscal year 23 for use. So we do have that funding. The funding levels are about $1 billion more than what we expected. So we will be working through that extra work whenever we do get the final budgets from the legislature after they close session. There were 3 earmarks in Hillsborough County, one for T-Barter at $1.5 million, and one from the Lois Avenue Complete Streets, which was about $350,000, and then we had the crosswalks classrooms, which was about $350,000. That's a quick glimpse at where we're at. You know, financially, DOT is, you know, we're fully funded for next year and moving forward with that.
Can I just ask a question? What do you mean by there were earmarks? Because, you know, we've been asked forever not to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there was 3 of them submitted, 2 of them, the T-Barter and the Lois Avenue was submitted by Representative Toledo, and then Representative Hart submitted the crosswalks to the classroom.
Okay, I see. You're just informing us that those are sitting out there and could possibly be
Yes, ma'am.
a part of the budget or not.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner Overman.
And actually, this is in combination with making sure that FDOT and the MPO members that are talking about policy and from our various different partners, how we coordinate that. Johnny Wong's presentation on the criteria you use for the development process of the TIP, I think it would be great to further discuss that with our various different, you know, submitters, because obviously there's a very different approach from the way the city of Tampa put their list together, from the way the county put its list together. And the criteria that you're using for getting through the filter, I think is really important for each of the parties to understand. So for example, the county's projects are limited to very, very large projects that seem to interface with FDOT's highway system. Whereas the city of Tampa was more boots on the ground for safety and had a lot of the criteria that we've established as an MPO embedded in each one of their projects. And I think going forward, I think as each of us look at our lists, we want to make sure that we add all the lists there so that when they go through this filtering process and the funding process, that we have the greatest success of hitting each of those marks in a solid way. It may mean that some of the big projects don't get funded, but if we get 6 smaller projects that are funded, then we're still moving our transportation agenda forward. And that's what I want to make sure we don't miss the mark when we're looking at this development process on a year-to-year basis, because that's what makes citizens show up screaming at a meeting, because they know that these items have been discussed, but they somehow don't get through the process. And I think we need a robust conversation about that going forward. So thank you.
That's a great point. And with that, I'll just fast old new business. Hope you don't have any, because we have to close out here, and we'll adjourn.
All right.
Does everyone need a minute to?
I'll be right back.
Okay, all right. We're just going to take a quick bathroom break for anyone that. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday, April 14th meeting of the MPO. Before we have a roll call, let's all stand together for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, could we have a roll call, please? Here.
Kemp,
Here.
Oberman,
Here.
Myers,
Here.
Citro,
Here.
Wagner, Ross, Dingfelder,
What?
Williams,
Here.
Evans, Smith,
Here.
Kilton,
Here.
Blue? Here.
I can't hear the names being called during the roll call.
Okay, we'll see if we can address that. I know that Mayor Ross just walked in after his name was called, and I believe that was School Board Member Vaughn who just said that she's having some difficulty hearing what's going on in here.
Thank you.
Just give us one moment, please. We're seeing if we can't get these issues worked out.
Just don't say anything you don't want heard.
Okay, she's got a mic now.
Okay, good. Let's go. Are we done with the roll call, or do we still have a few names to work through?
Jessica Vaughn is here. And Derek Dowdy? Okay, we do have an in-person quorum of 9.
Okay, thank you. We do have an in-person quorum. All right, can we have a motion for approval of the minutes of February 10th and March 10th, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Kemp, seconded by Councilman Citro. I believe we need to have a roll call vote on that item.
Cohen?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Overman?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Citro?
Yes.
Wagner? Yes. Ross?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Kilton?
Yes.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Yes,
Vaughn?
Maniscalco, I'm sorry.
Okay. Vaughn?
Yes.
Dowdy? Motion carries 14-0.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment this morning? We have 3 minutes set aside per speaker. Is there anyone scheduled to speak?
No one is signed up.
Okay, so we will dispense with that, and we will move on to committee reports in advance. I believe our first speaker is Bill Roberts, the CAC.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Report on the April 7th Citizens Advisory Committee is in your packet, but I'll hit some of the highlights. The CAC has nominated Jonathan Knudsen as an alternate for the at-large seat for under 30, age of 30 representatives. You have 6 committee appointments on your agenda today. I'm happy you have a quorum. I'm happy to welcome Nicholas Glover, my good friend from the Chamber, to our Citizens Advisory Committee. And also pleased to see that Amber Dickerson is nominated for the LRC. I think we support all of those committee appointments. The Citizens Advisory Committee heard a report from the FDOT on the I-4 frame project, and I on your agenda today. Members of the CAC had some concerns about how the onboard units would be funded, concerns about the privacy of data, and concerns about the coordination with localities like Plant City. Ultimately, the CAC approved the TIP amendment by a vote of 13-3 and passed it on to this board for your action today. The committee heard a status report on the MPO's non-discrimination plan regarding demographics, historical context, and outreach. Several members of the committee commended the staff members, Joshua Barber and Dana Lazarus, for their work and are looking forward to the final product. The committee suggests some additional outreach to alumni from Blake and Middleton high schools regarding this non-discrimination plan, and as well as gaining input from the Plant City Improvement League. I hope you'll take those into consideration. The CAC also raised the possibility of moving forward with the I-275 Boulevard study. We will look forward to a further report on this project at our May meeting. And then lastly, the CAC had as an ad hoc committee for study of the TIP process. That subcommittee met on March 19th to discuss the TIP program and make sure all of our members understand the process as well as the substance of the TIP's projects and priorities. A follow-up meeting is scheduled for May 3rd for the subcommittee and a preview of the new improved TIP. Thank you. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Roberts before we move on? Well, thank you, Bill, for that report. I don't see any hands up. I'm going to move on to Davita Franklin, MPO staff, and Beth Alden to give us any additional information on this item.
Good morning, everyone. Here's your summary of committee reports. The Technical Advisory Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee approved the Transportation Improvement Program amendment for the I-4 Frame Integrated Corridor Management Project. The two committees also heard status reports on the Non-Discrimination Plan demographics and outreach. The Technical Advisory Committee also heard a status update on Center for Urban Transportation Research Equity Needs Assessment, the Hillsborough County School Route Program Development Process and Safe Routes to School projects, Selmon Expressway Project Development and Environment Studies, and the Port Tampa Bay Master Plan. Additionally, the Citizens Advisory Committee also, as an action, as you just heard, nominated an alternate for its under 30 representative, and the ad hoc subcommittee discussed transportation improvement program projects and priorities. The Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Livable Roadways Committee heard status reports on the Hillsborough County School Route Program Development Process and Safe Routes to School projects, in-road safety lights, and the Flamingo Fairs update. The Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee also heard an update on Florida Department of Health's Hillsborough Community Health Assessment, and the Livable Roadways Committee heard status reports on parking management strategies. The Intelligent Transportation System Committee heard a status report on Transportation Improvement Program Amendment for the I-4 Frame Integrated Corridor Management Project and Intelligent Transportation System Architecture. For our summary of public comments, we have a few emails, one from Charles Eldridge. He expressed a grievance for being removed from the low-income focus group that was part of the non-discrimination plan outreach. Megan Cott expressed appreciation for the donation of reflective helmet stickers she received on behalf of the Center for Urban Transportation Research's Motorcycle Injury Prevention Institute. Ellie Baggett requested guidance on how to encourage the Florida Department of Transportation to address safety issues along Nebraska Avenue, specifically between Hillsborough Avenue and Osborne Avenue. And Lena Young requested support for the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association summer program. Michael Flores thanked Beth Alden for presenting to Leadership Tampa, along with Bryce Rich, who thanked her as well. And Terrence Trott asked for a way to escalate concerns about traffic backups along US 301 between Big Bend Road and Gibsonton Drive. Michelle Tolmoff expressed concerns about Wamama regarding traffic safety in the community around schools, and in addition to incomplete sidewalks and trails. And Richard K. Hennick suggested the Bruce B. Downs corridor could be a pilot area for intelligent stoplights. We also had a couple of social media comments. On Twitter, Chris Vela, in response to Beth Alden's interview about transportation funding challenges that aired on WUSF's Florida Matters podcast, he said, "So glad the news cables are taking note." And Rock King, regarding plans for the Celadon paper plant at Port Tampa Bay, said, "Careful here. In Mobile, Alabama, the permeating fragrance is the paper mill." And we did have a comment on Facebook. The National Safety Council said, "Thank you for the help to hashtag keep each other safe during Distracted Driving Awareness Month." This concludes my report, and Ms. Alden will now give a quick report on the policy committee meeting that just occurred. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Franklin.
Thank you. So the policy committee was just briefed about the new project funding requests that are coming forward from the local governments that we'll be considering in this year's update of the Transportation Improvement Program. To see the complete video of that, we will be posting that up on our YouTube channel so that everybody can see for themselves what the local governments provided for information about their projects.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any raised hands. So as a result, we are going to move right into our action items. We have 5 this morning. So without any further discussion, we're going to move to committee appointments and Rich Clarendon from the MPO staff.
Yes, good morning. I hope everybody can hear me.
Good morning. We can.
Okay, great. We have a number of folks who have been nominated over the last couple of months to serve on a couple of different of your advisory committees. So the following people have been nominated to serve on the Citizens Advisory Committee. Those would include Vivian Handy, nominated by Commissioner Smith, Stephen Hollenkamp by the City of Plant City, Rick Fernandez by the CAC to fill the seat reserved for a Hispanic representative, Sharon Gamond with Eric Lamb as her alternate, nominated by the CAC to fill the at-large seat for business, representative of the business community, Jonathan Knudsen to serve as an alternate for the representative under age 30, and then Nicholas Glover nominated by Hart. On the Livable Roadways Committee, we have several nominations, including Christian Leon, nominated to serve as the advocate, as an alternate for the advocate for livable communities, Matthew Pleasant as the regular member, backed up by Amber Dickerson as his alternate, nominated by the school district, and then Una Johnson nominated by the American Society of Landscape Architects as an alternate member. So those are the people that are seeking approval, confirmation from this board.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm having a little bit of difficulty with my own iPad here, but let me just make sure that there are no hands raised. I don't see any at the moment. So, Ms. Alden, can we go ahead and entertain a motion to confirm all of these appointments at once?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Citro, I believe, seconded by Commissioner Kemp. We will just go ahead and have a roll call vote to confirm all of these appointments.
Cohen,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Overman,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Kilton,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Motion carries 14-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item B now. That is the Transportation Improvement Program amendment for the I-4 frame project.
Good morning, board members. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but barely. Maybe you can speak up just a tad.
Sure. I'm going to be handing this presentation over to Megan, who would be talking about this project briefly, and then it will come back to me, and I will request for an approval. Thank you.
Okay. So, Megan, I think you're on.
Good morning. My name is Megan Araste, and I'm the System Management and Operations Program Engineer for DOT District 7. My presentation today is about the Florida Regional Advanced Mobility Elements Project. This project encompasses more than District 7. It's a regional project. This is a pilot project in a major corridor which connects two major metropolitan cities. The project will improve the safety of 151,000 motorists which travel between Tampa and Orlando daily. Based on what we have heard from this board and others, the department is looking at new technology to increase safety, optimize capacity, without any additional lanes or acquiring new right-of-way. We are looking at technology as a solution in all of our corridors in district. Next slide, please. What I would like to present to you is what the project is about, why the project is needed, where the infrastructure is located, and how will it help with the safety and mobility of the public. And last, I will present to you the design and construction schedule. Next slide, please. What is the I-4 Regional Advanced Mobility Element Project? As you know, the department vision is to promote safety, mobility, and innovation, and to make your trip more reliable and safe every day. The I-4 Frame Project technologies will allow vehicles to talk to vehicles, vehicles to talk to signals, and the infrastructure that we're building with this project. Next slide, please. Why do we need the I-4 Frame Project? As we know, I-4 is a vital artery for economic activities, connecting two metropolitan areas from East Coast to West Coast. Orlando received 75 million annual visitors in 2018, and it's the top America's most visited destination. As I mentioned before, there are 151,000 vehicles traveling daily, and during 2016 and 2018, there were 45 fatal crashes and 2,081 injury crashes. Any of the crashes that unfortunately has resulted in a fatality will require 4 hours for I-4 to be closed for the traffic homicide investigation. I-4 averages 2 lane closure events per day and 1 full directional closure every 11 days in 2018. So in summary, we would like to improve the safety, reduce the delay on I-4, and solve the unreliable congestion which causes secondary accidents that are resulting from the congestion. Next slide, please. This slide shows a lot of red, which means these are all the locations of all the crashes that are the incidents that have happened on I-4. And this is exactly what we like to improve and solve the unreliable congestion that also improves the safety. Next slide, please. Where is the I-4 frame project going to take place? Again, it's on I-4, between Tampa and Orlando. It's 77 miles of I-4 between these two destinations. It's going to be 200 miles of arterials, which are basically our surface streets, and it's going to communicate with 381 traffic signals throughout the project area. Next slide, please. This slide shows you the regional impact of this project. For instance, in District 7, this project encompasses 25 miles of I-4, 80 miles of arterial, and 30 miles of the State Road 60 connected vehicle project. It also includes 3 miles of the Florida Turnpike roadway. As I mentioned, this is a regional project. It includes the areas in District 1, District 5, and Turnpike. District 1 includes 30 miles of I-4 and 100 miles of arterials and 24 miles of Turnpike roadway. And the District 1 project will be managed from the regional RTMC, the RTMC at District 7. Next slide, please. This slide has a lot of color on it. What I'd like you to look with me is the area on the left side, which shows the brown that you see on your screen is I-4. In the middle of your screen, you see I-4. And then you see the teal color, which is the diversion routes for the I-4 project. And as many of you, just like myself, you have been, in a congestion in I-4. It's a little bit frustrating. It impacts the economy, and frankly, what we need is alternate routes. So what does this project provide to the traveling public? It is alternate routes when I-4 is congested. How are we going to do that? The teal, as I mentioned to you, is the primary route for any time that congestion happens on I-4. What we're going to do, we're going to give information to the traveling public that, for instance, if you stay on the I-4 route, it's going to take an hour and a half to get to your destination. However, if you choose Hillsborough Avenue, which is the primary route as shown in teal, then it will take this many minutes. And then if Hillsborough Avenue is congested, then the dashed teal line, it's MLK, and the green line, which is the State Road 60. So these are all alternate routes that will help with the reducing the time to get to the destination of the travelers when I-4 is backed up. Now, how are we going to do this? We're going to also work very, very closely with local agencies. We are going to look at the timing of the signals in the primary and the secondary roads and make sure that there are enough messages that are shared with the travelers regarding how they can use their alternative routes. The same concept is in District 1. For instance, in District 1, you see the blue area that is shown. I'm sorry, the area that is shown for District 1 is the red. The primary routes are the solid red, and the dashed lines are the secondary alternative routes. The same, the blue one is in District 5, and Turnpike is shown there too. Next slide, please. This slide shows the location of all the devices that are going to be deployed in District 1 and District 7. As an overall, there will be 600 plus devices that are going to be deployed, and these devices are what will help with giving the information to the travelers to minimize the impact for any backup on I-4. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share with you what these devices are and how the communication is done between the vehicles and roadside units. So there are two devices that are going to be deployed with this project. The main one is the vehicle to infrastructure, which is the roadside units. These roadside units, you have some, on the last slide, you saw the location of those roadside units, which are, it could be in at every intersection, and it will help with the communication. For instance, in this scenario, there are going to be devices that are going to be in the cars, and those devices provide the communication between, for instance, one red car to the other red car, and also the communication between the red car to the roadside unit. The information that's exchanged mainly is the speed and the location of the vehicles. Next slide, please. This slide shows, now I showed you a cartoon of, what was going to happen and what was going to be deployed with this project. These are, for instance, the top left picture is the roadside unit that I mentioned before. The roadside unit is a wireless communication between the roadway infrastructure and the vehicle that are equipped with onboard units. Now, as you see, these devices are not invasive. You hardly will notice it when you see it on the poles. And the RSU units are the devices that are installed in the vehicles to allow communication with OBUs or other RSUs. So the question would be, when will these the onboard units will be either installed in existing cars or the new cars that are coming out? For instance, Ford will be coming out with a vehicle in 2022 which will have an onboard unit. However, the onboard units, what I'd like to mention is that the information that goes from the onboard unit on a vehicle to the roadside units, there are secure management systems that make sure that the vehicle information is not shared. So basically, the only thing they're sharing is the location of a car and the speed of the car. We're not sharing specific information about the car itself. What I envisioned for this is that, for instance, 20 years ago, we all had the TVs, and we then came along the high definition TVs. So how did we get from the existing TV to the high definition TVs? We had the small boxes that converted the old TV to the new signal for high definition. So these onboard units are very similar to that concept. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking, the cars will be communicating, communicating with the roadside units. So what information is being communicated? This slide shows 7 areas that we're going to communicate. For instance, we're going to communicate the traffic incident management. We are going to broadcast traffic incident information to vehicles, maintenance and construction information, and especially during evacuation during the hurricane season. Then speed harmonization message system, broadcast vehicle speed advisory to warn drivers of reduced speed recommendation based on the roadway condition ahead. For instance, it gives us in your car, you would get an alert that there's a backup, and the recommendation is to reduce the speed, so reducing the rear end crashes. It provides work zone traffic information from active construction projects. It also provides freeway back of queue warning. So what is this? This is, for instance, you're going around the curve and then all the traffic has stopped. So it gives you, it lets you know that you're coming around the curve and the traffic had stopped. So it gives you the recommendation in advance for you to also reduce your speed. It provides information for wrong-way driving. As we know, in District 7, we have had incidents with the wrong-way driving. This approach, will approach it in two-prong. For instance, right now we have devices on the off-ramps where if there's a wrong-way driver, the signs will get lit, and also gives the opportunity maybe for that driver to make the right decision and turn around. This is what we have right now, but in this scenario also, it gives a message to other drivers that there is a wrong-way driver on the road that they're traveling, hence giving them an opportunity to, for instance, get out of the roadway that they're traveling at the first exit that they come to. So it gives an option to the drivers how to approach the wrong-way driver. Freight management, it broadcasts traffic management information to freight vehicles and also broadcasts availability in rest area. And last is the predictive analytic. The predictive analytic is its infancy. The main project that we have right now that will have that opportunity would be the City of Tampa ATMS project. And basically with this is using historical information to predict the location and the time of the crashes in a segment of roadway. Next slide, please. This slide shows the schedule for the project. For instance, right now the design will be completed for the I-4 frame project in District 7 and the State Road 60 CAB project. These two projects will be going as goes with, and it would be one contract, and the design completion is fall of 2021, and the contractor will be on board in spring of 2022. And the costs are included 11.5 and 1.7 million respectively. The second contract will include the District 1, 5, and Florida Turnpike projects. And again, as you see, the design will be completed in spring of 2021, with the contractor being on board in summer of 2022. The respective costs are 9.3, 3.7, and 1 million. And and lastly, again, these plans are right now in 90% design. Hence, we'll be working on finalizing the contract duration. But right now, the preliminary construction schedule is summer of 2024 for the I-4 frame State Road 60 CAB project, and for the other three projects would be early 2025. Next slide, please. And this is my contact information, and also the district traffic ops engineer, Mr. Ron Chin's information, contact information.
Well, thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive presentation. Commissioner Overman had her hand raised, and I also see Mayor Ross.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Aristad, for that presentation. I want to make sure I understood it correctly when you talk about the technology and how it actually operates. So now when I get in my car with my iPhone, I use iMaps and Google, and it tells me how fast I'm supposed to go, what the speed limit is in that location. If there's a crash ahead, it tells me that there's a red light camera ahead. It does let me know when there's traffic on I-4 that's a mess, but I don't get on I-4, so I take a lot of those alternative routes. For example, Hillsborough Avenue is my go-to. MLK and 60 are my go-to because I avoid I-4 like the plague. But that's my personal preference. But that being said, I travel on those roads a great deal. And if those local roads that are streets that people live on, they're urban streets with people who like to use them for walking on sidewalks and crossing the roads, are primarily the ulterior or alternative road for a highway at high speeds. In the policy that's developed using this technology, what assurances do the people in those local municipalities that you're designing roads to act as an alternative to I-4, that safety comes first as opposed to moving traffic through at a rapid rate because it's being used as an alternative to a highway?
Thank you for your question. As far as using the alternative routes, which would be Hillsborough, MLK, and State Road 60, again, when this traffic is being routed to the primary and secondary routes, we will be working very, very closely with the cities and the counties, TMCs, to make sure that the signal timing is managed so that it provides that capacity that's needed for the additional traffic that's being routed from I-4. This is more, as you said, I mean, right now we use Google and we get some of this information. However, the benefit of this is giving us the timing of these alternative routes for the primary and the secondary. I also have Dale Cody, who is the engineer of record from Metric for this project. And Dale, if you'd like to add to the information for the question.
Sure. So first, thank you very much. Very quickly, a couple items. Megan was absolutely right. When the diversion routes are done, the signal timings will be adjusted. That will allow for capacity to go on. Something to keep in mind from a safety perspective, when you're going ahead, anytime you stop traffic, whether that's on an interstate or on a local road, that there's a higher percentage chance of secondary crashes. So we certainly want to reduce those. Those are at least somewhat preventable. In addition, the frustration and the loss that occurs with any kind of economic gridlock. The beautiful thing about the system, although we sometimes focus on the diversion routes, is actually a big part of it is actually safety applications, cue warnings like Megan had talked about earlier, curve warnings, things like that. So in conjunction with, yes, people are going to get off and just to clarify, we're not talking about.
You're breaking up, sir.
We're talking full closures.
You know what? We're having a little bit of audio difficulty hearing
I'm
you
sorry.
here. Yeah. Commissioner Overman, do you want to?
Yeah, I just have a quick follow-up to address some of the answer that I got, which is, as one who lives near Florida Avenue, that oftentimes is an alternative route to 275 historically, and has actually a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is well in excess of a pedestrian safety limit. My concerns are, and it takes literally an act of God to change it, because it's the flow of traffic that determines the appropriate speed rather than the safety of pedestrians, rather than, determines the speed. And so I'm concerned about the potential changes on those roads that would accelerate the speed limits to accommodate that being a primary alternative road. And that is a concern because we've seen a lot of accidents on Florida because it is used as an alternative to 275 north of the interchange.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go to Mayor Ross and then Mr. Wagner. And then I see that there are two people who are participating virtually with their hands up. Unfortunately, I can't tell who you are from my screen, but we're gonna try to figure that out but we're going to hear from Mayor Ross and then Mr. Wagner.
With your permission, Commissioner, I'd like to let Mr.
Oh,
Wagner
go
go
ahead.
first, because I think if I'm reading this right, I think what he has to say is in direct response.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so VIA has a connected vehicle pilot project that they've been running now for 3 years.
Sir, your mic is off. You need to move your mic down towards you. There you go.
VIA has a connected vehicle pilot project that we've been running for about 3 years now. Am I on now?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe, although it wasn't mentioned, we have been asked to partner, or we are partnering with FDOT on the frame concept. Connected vehicle technology is first and foremost about safety, completely about safety. All the applications you saw them list were about making the driver more aware of what's happening in front of them in a very timely method, quickly, and equipping automobiles with onboard technologies that relay that to you without you having to look at your phone is the coming technology that's going to happen. So know that first and foremost it is about safety and giving the appropriate warnings, but it's also about providing information from the street back to the infrastructure manager. You heard them talk about managing the light signals, all right? It's not just about light signals for traffic, for the vehicles, it's about the light signals for pedestrians. If you saw a presentation of our project, what we're doing, it's the one, our project is the one where you implement connected vehicle technology into the central business district. We cover about a 3/4 square mile of downtown Tampa where you come off of the reversible express lane and our traffic feeds and flows through that. We equipped buses, we equipped trolley cars, as well as our volunteers who were, we had over 1,000 volunteers put onboard units in their vehicles. We had the roadside units look like that. We had sensors put in the traffic signal systems. All of this is about enhancing safety so that if a car is about to turn in front of a moving trolley, the trolley would get a warning of that event and stop faster. Believe it or not, you wouldn't think that happens, but it does. It's about buses experiencing the same thing. We tried to develop a phone app that would work in a quick fashion to, warn drivers of a pedestrian approaching a crosswalk. That was a little tougher to do. We didn't get that one across. But if you'd like to see more information about how this technology and what its primary purpose is, because it's not about making cars go faster. That is not the point. It's about making the environment safer for cars, for pedestrians, and for cyclists all across the board. And anytime you make it safer, you make it flow better. That's the bottom line. In the end, you're going to flow better. You're going to have a safer environment for the public we serve, and that's our mission. That's mine.
That's exactly the outcome I'm looking for.
That's what it's all about.
Thank you.
Mayor Ross, did you want to?
I do have a quick question. Thank you, Commissioner. So if I understand this technology correctly, this requires an onboard device on the vehicles in order to have two-way communication with the roadside. So that's my question is, how does that work? Is that a separate device or are you going to propose, or is cell phone data used for that, or is that a separate device? And if it's a separate device, how will we get people to put that separate device on their car?
These are onboard units that are going to be put, either the new cars will have it or they will, the existing cars. This is something that obviously that's a great idea, and that's something the department is exploring right now. And there are some that will be given, for instance, to freight that will allow them to be used on the State Road 60 CAD project. And this is, again, something that the department right now is exploring as far as how can we provide some of these units to the public. But at the same time, Mr. Wagner, I know that you have on your the TIA project, that the pilot project, you have also deployed some of those onboard units.
If I could to add.
Yes, of course.
So you're right, we had to build literally 1,000 onboard units and ask for volunteers so we could put them in their cars, and we installed them, along with all the other vehicles I talked about. The day is coming, though, when these will become a standard part of the equipment built into the car. Just like today, you can, the phone call system, the navigation systems are now in the car. The next phase of our connected vehicle pilot project, we recently got another grant from the feds, another $4 million, to include OEMs, the original engineering manufacturers. So Hyundai, Honda, and Toyota, we are working with right now to add them to our network and our participants with their technology. So it's the next step that's coming in getting the technology not as an add-on that you can put in, but it comes built into the vehicle. What also happens is over time, you're going to see these onboard units be something you can probably buy at Best Buy and stick it in your car and hook up to the network. Right now, what it's all about is the government agencies, and that starts with, people willing and to put the experimental time into it, like THEA and like FDOT, have got to develop the standards, right? Because until you get a set of standards out there that aligns communication methodologies and messaging technology, all the software components, it's hard to put that unit on the shelf for a very affordable price. But that's what this is all about. Somebody's got to take the lead. THEA has been doing it, FDOT is doing it, and that's our purpose. That's our primary mission, is about serving safety and transportation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Dale,
yes.
I'm sorry, Dale, also, would you like to?
Yes, I apologize. It's hard for me to see you down there, but I can see that you raised your hand.
Big head, I'll back up.
Go ahead.
My question was similar to Commissioner Overman about the.
Dale, go ahead. Are you on mute?
Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My question was similar to Commissioner Overman, when you look at the redirection of the traffic and what that means for those areas and communities. And I think that you reinforced the safety aspect of it, so that was very good to hear. My other question I had was around some of the reaction that a car or a driver needs to take if they are going the wrong way, and there were some other examples on one of the slides. Do we have any plans to educate the public on what those things are, or how we manage through those when they happen? Because it's not only having the tool, but it's understanding the tool and being able to react well. So I didn't hear anything about that, and I want to get some more information if it's possible, please. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, ma'am. District 7 and the Traffic Operations Group is right now working on putting the information together for educating the public, as you mentioned. And this is very similar to many other scenarios where department has new technology, and it's very important to have the YouTube videos or the handouts, or to inform the public with regards to how the new technology works. So yes, ma'am, we are working on that.
Okay, and Commissioner Kemp.
Thank you. And it might be a little bit along the same veins as the others, but I had noticed, right, when you showed the PowerPoint, you showed pedestrians in a crosswalk and showed a communication from the pedestrians to the tower, as if they could, see where pedestrians were. And it's kind of been part of this conversation. So can you see where pedestrians are? That's, I thought, the great challenge about all this.
Well, the concept right there is that the vehicle recognizes the pedestrian that's in the crosswalk or jaywalking, and gives the notice to the driver to, make the decision to stop, so, it wouldn't be any accident with the pedestrian. And Dale, if you would like to add to that.
You're muted, Dale.
Can you guys hear me better now?
Well, we're still having some audio difficulty.
Let me try one more time.
There you go.
There you go.
All right, excellent. All right, so basically there are two options, right? So the first one is, right now, we're looking at LiDAR systems. And LiDAR systems are basically going, I'm sorry?
No, I thought maybe you were say that. Go ahead.
Okay. We're looking at LiDAR systems, and those can run a couple 100 feet out beyond the crosswalk, and that is something we can do today. Down the road, what you would be looking on the pedestrian side is likely using some type of using their phone and some type of georeference to understand exactly where they are relative to where they are crossing and provide that information to a vehicle as far as pedestrians approaching. So the important thing to understand, the commissioner earlier had mentioned something about wrong way driving or, things of that nature. We're supplementing the system. We're not just waiting for, all the vehicles to have OBUs, for all the people to have OBUs and all the pedestrians to have applications. We're also supplementing these systems with some secondary systems, such as wrong way systems at 21 interchanges. And we're also going ahead and, in this case, doing beta testing at 2 to 3 locations for both LiDAR and, yes, CV as well. So basically what you would have is you'd have the LiDAR, which does not require any type of phone connection, but then you would also utilize a phone application to provide georeferencing for the system.
And I have one more question with regards to this, because this has been something, I think HOV lanes are wonderful tools that communities are giving up. They make sense to me in terms of doing the best to move the most people in a limited space. And one of the things that I always hear is the fact, well, we can't judge how many people, it's impossible to see how many people are in this HOV lane, particularly if it's a tolled lane in terms of the management, I call surge pricing lanes, that are used, but finding the number of people that are in a vehicle is the challenge. And so I'm wondering about any of this technology with regards to that challenge.
Thank you for your question. From my knowledge, it does not. So, but that's something that it's a very good question. We can look at that, but for now, it does not.
Okay, thanks. It would solve a seemingly huge technical problem.
It's not solvable. And it also comes with privacy issues if you even implement it. What you find instead in HOV lanes is you incur a significant enforcement cost to police the lanes and make sure people are doing it right. Even when it's a price managed lane, you have what they call a declarative transponder that you switch on and off. And it still takes enforcement to manage that. So that's the biggest reason why non-priced HOV lanes have gone away, because they're abused so badly that they don't work in the end at peak hours. They break down. So
interesting. Well, I hadn't heard that. I just wondered about even enforcement, like if people voluntarily would put on phones or do that as part of being in an HOV lane in the future, or have their as they do with any of the technology, like if they put a transponder on their windows or whatever, that.
Yeah. But they do it and they put a mannequin in the seat next to them. It's some great stories out there.
Well, yeah, of course.
Councilman Citro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is technology that's long overdue, especially for I-4. It seems that every day there is an accident there. We must remember that not everybody can afford a brand new car. Some people have to wait for an older model, 5, 10 years old. There are those people that can barely afford gas. Hopefully these OBUs can be given to the people that still have to travel 10 miles to get to a low-paying job. I hope that's going to be in consideration in the future.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your comment.
Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, that's a great point about how the vehicle fleet transitions to the technology. And it's going to take, literally, because of the way they build cars now, decades for it to happen. But it's kind of similar to the pandemic and the herd immunity thing. There's a corollary there. Once you get a certain percentage of connected vehicles on the street, benefits derive to the whole. All right, so that's going to happen sooner than the fleet rolls over completely. So it's a good observation, and just wanted to share that with you as well. There can be benefits even if you aren't equipped.
There also may be people that would feel much safer having one of these in their vehicles that have to travel those 10 miles for a low-paying job. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I do not see any more hands raised. So at this time, Ms. Ramon, do you want to bring us back to the vote?
Sure, sir. I don't have much to request here, since it was an interesting discussion. I would just like to request board for approval of this iframe project, as it's so important for our community.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Kemp. Do I hear a second? From Mr. Wagner. Thank you very much. We are going to have a roll call vote on this item.
Cohen,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Overman,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Kilton,
Yes.
Maniscalco, Klug,
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Motion carries 13-0.
Okay,
you all.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to the designation of the Community Transportation Coordinator and the annual update on the Transportation Disadvantage Program.
Hello, board members. Nice to see you all again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. I'm here to provide an update on the Transportation Disadvantage Program and to request that the MPO board support the redesignation of the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners as the Community Transportation Coordinator for the county and the Sunshine Line as the operator. As you all know, our 10-year Transportation Disadvantage Planner, Michelle Ogilvy, retired last year. And since then, I've taken over the program. The purpose of our Transportation Disadvantage Coordinated System is to ensure the availability of efficient, cost-effective, and quality transportation services for transportation disadvantaged persons, which are people who are low income, have a disability, are older adults, or children at risk. And I just want to provide some highlights of our program over the past year. We've completed our annual Community Transportation Coordinator evaluation. This was not a required product this year as part of our TD planning grant dollars, but MPO staff in coordination with the Sunshine Line decided to move forward with conducting an evaluation to assess how COVID-19 has impacted the coordinated system and to document what steps the CTC has taken to provide a safe and effective system during these times. In addition to that, we've begun the process of our major transportation disadvantage service plan update. Typically, we do a minor update every year, and a major update coincides with the redesignation of the CTC, which is this year. This major update includes a fresh round of outreach with agencies that provide services for TD people and to better understand unmet needs across the county. We've supported the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority and USERV, which is a transportation network company, in a grant application to the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantage to provide cross-county, weekend, and late-night trips to TD eligible clients, basically filling gaps within our coordinated system. That program was approved and is currently operating under the name TD Tampa Bay. And they will be applying for a second round of funding this month. We've begun transitioning our Tri-County Local Coordinating Board to an annual meeting that will provide priorities to the Chair's Coordinating Committee. We've coordinated with the Florida Department of Transportation to help score applications for Section 5310 funding. We've begun to discuss how the growth of new transportation technology companies and infrastructure such as TNCs are impacting the coordinated system and in what ways they can be used to fill gaps in TD services and what roles they play as well. We've also completed our 2020 Ride Guide, which provides it's a pamphlet that provides an overview of transportation services available in the Tri-County region. And we've also made that compliant with web content accessibility guidelines. So those are just some highlights over the past year. And I want to dive a bit into the redesignation of our Community Transportation Coordinator now. The role of the CTC is to coordinate the provision of cost-effective, efficient, unduplicated, and unfragmented transportation services with all local transportation service providers within our county. The Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners has acted as the county CTC since 1990, so for 30 years now, and Sunshine Line has been operating that service for the county. Over the past 5 years, since the last redesignation of our community transportation coordinator, the Sunshine Line has continued to meet all the service standards set forth in our service plan. They have provided reliable, effective, and efficient services to transportation disadvantaged clients, and that shows in our evaluation standards evaluation. Some highlights are a significant reduction in the number of road calls, which shows their responsiveness to community needs and board concerns. Our customer service survey that we conduct every year shows an overall satisfaction with the Sunshine Line at 99%. And we did have a question this year on our evaluation on how clients feel about their safety riding during the pandemic, which had a 96 or 97% rate of those customers do feel safe. In addition, they've found multiple innovative ways to continue to serve our community while maintaining high standards for service and safety during the pandemic, including meal delivery and providing trips to vaccinate clients as well. We should all be really proud of the work our community transportation coordinator has done and continues to do. And I'm happy to recommend and request that the MPO board support the redesignation of the Hillsborough Board of County Commissioners and their operator, the Sunshine Line, as our community transportation coordinator, and to approve resolution 2021-1 and forward this recommendation on to the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Move the item.
Second.
Mariella Smith.
I heard Commissioner Smith move the item. I know she's the chair of the Transportation Disadvantaged Coordinating Board. It's been seconded by Commissioner Kemp. Is there any board discussion before we vote on this item? I don't see any. So do we need a roll call vote on this? Yeah, we do. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Cohen? Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Oberman?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Citro?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Kilton?
Yes.
Klug?
Yes.
Vaughn?
Yes.
Motion carries 13-0.
Okay, thank you very much. And we're going to move on now to a bylaws amendment for the Livable Roads and Policy Committees.
Good morning, Board. This is Lisa Silva, MPO staff. This is the second reading of a bylaws amendment, so this will be for action today. Just a little refresher. In November, the Livable Roadways requested a membership addition to add the school district member to their membership. The bylaws change will transfer the school district staff member from the Technical Advisory Committee over to the Livable Roadways Committee. And then in January, the Policy Committee discussed having a fictitious name change and a limit on terms for the officers to limit it to 2 consecutive years. The amendment attachment shows the revisions highlighted in strap changes on pages 1, 2, and 11.
Okay, any comments or questions from board members at this time?
No, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to thank Ms. Silver on her hard work on this. Well done.
You need a motion to approve?
Yes.
I think it'd be important to say what the name is, the fictitious name. I didn't hear that?
Yeah.
Hillsborough Transportation Planning Agency.
Hillsborough Transportation Planning Agency.
So I had just some thoughts about that.
Go
I
ahead.
think it's important. So typically when they've changed, and I've really supported some change because I just think Metropolitan means nothing to anyone. And some people have made their names, I think, more obscure to what their missions are. But typically around the country, lots of places have changed their name to transportation planning organizations, only because it mirrors the MPO, but it gives a real transportation planning organization. And so I kind of like that for the uniformity. I know that you, Commissioner Cohen, expressed some misgivings about organization. I just wonder about losing that a little bit just because of the nature of if you go anywhere, everybody knows what your transportation planning organization is, since that's like a more standard use. So I just was thinking about that a little bit. And I also wonder, and I know you felt that agency or authority or some other words more reflected perhaps the organization. I feel like rather than agency, which sounds like a department of government, at least authority, which sounds like it has a board and is a type organization more reflective. So I'm thinking authority or, and when I think too about kind of the MPO's mission and what it was designated by the federal government to do, which was community involvement and be the kind of intersection between the road building and transportation projects and the community organization, I feel like might be it, or at least authority to reflect a body that would be a voting body and a body, but.
Commissioner Overman raised her hand, so it's
So-
fine, I
so-
think you're just
So we're
having
going to
discussion.
either be a PTA or a PTO. So I think if, I mean, if we go to, agency, it would end up being PTA. If it's, and because we
mean
do use acronyms.
TPO. TPO,
Hillsborough
TPA.
Planning Transportation Agency or organization or, depending on what we use. I like organization because we've been an organization. I think having some sense of consistency is there. Planning clearly is there. But if transportation needed to be added to the word, I'm fine with that too. But I do think that we do need to decide what is best for the organization to make it clear, so that's good. But then the other issue is recognizing we live in a world of acronyms. And we don't want to get caught up with the PTA. And we all know the PTA has a long history of
TPA.
schools. Oh, okay.
Just so you know, Transportation Planning Authority or Transportation, right now it would be TPA, which would be Transportation Planning Agency, as she said it just now, TPA. And so the other would be TPO, which is used everywhere, or I don't say everywhere, but used in a lot of places. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. The only concern, I guess, that we would have with TPA is we're TPA. That might be confusing with the airport.
Yeah,
Just a thought to consider that, when you're saying, like, just like PTA, you have TPA.
All right. Can we just go back to organization?
Yeah, I don't really feel that strongly about this
Okay,
issue. It was more of a discussion that we had, and whatever is the pleasure of the board is fine with me. I think that our mission remains the same, regardless.
I'd like to move Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization.
So you'd like to make sure the word organization is brought back into the title, replacing agency. Okay, I believe Councilman Citro had asked if he could make the motion on this item. Can you incorporate Ms. Kemp's suggestion into your motion? Would that be all right?
Yes, I will go ahead and take her amendment on that, and I will move the motion. And I will move.
Do we hear a second? Second by Commissioner Overman. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve these amendments. Is there any discussion on the motion? I don't see any here live, and I don't see any hands raised out in the virtual sphere. So with that, we will go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Cohen,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Overman,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Kilton,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Motion carries 13-0.
Okay, thank you. Our final action item is our Executive Director Performance Review, and I believe our attorney, Mr. Clark, is going to take us through that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cameron Clark, MPO attorney. You should have received a packet in your emails this week. It includes a summary and attachments of evaluations that majority of the MPO board members filled out in their annual evaluation of Ms. Alden, the MPO director. This evaluation is a requirement of the MPO's staff services agreement with the Planning Commission. You'll see that the evaluation is, again, an excellent evaluation for Ms. Alden, scores ranging from 4.3 average to a 4.6 average out of 5. You'll see that numerous of the members also made comments on various categories of evaluation. The motion for this, the requested motion, is just to receive the evaluation, and then the members can take any action they wish in terms of generally the chair will communicate with Ms. Zornita, the director of the Planning Commission, regarding pay increases, but I believe that there's no recommendation of increase this year for anyone based on the freezes. So their only motion I would ask for is for a motion to receive the evaluation, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, do we have a?
Move to receive.
Commissioner Myers has a motion to receive, seconded by Commissioner Overman. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Cohen,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Overman,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Kilton,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay, well, congratulations, Ms. Alden, on an exemplary evaluation. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you to take us through our one status report that we have today on the Selmon Expressway PD&E study. And if you want to, right after that, go into your report, that would be just fine.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the favorable review. Last month, our policy committee held a workshop on racial discrimination in urban planning and transportation planning in Hillsborough County that took place primarily in the first half of the 20th century. Mr. Chris Vella addressed the board, asking for an opportunity to discuss this history as it relates to the South Selmon Expressway specifically, and the board supported that request, which brings us to the presentation before us. The history of the decisions made decades ago is painful to look at, but it is important for us to look at it in setting the stage for today's planning. And it's important to document and address in today's plans and environmental studies, including, among other things, the South Selmon PD&E study. We have shared that information at the staff level with the Expressway Authority, along with other comments about the South Selmon project, and they've been responsive. And so after Mr. Vella presents his summary of the history, Mr. Fry with the Expressway Authority will be providing a summary, a status report on the project as it stands today, and you'll see some of the changes that the Expressway Authority has made to make sure that the project fits in well with the community today. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Vella.
Hello, guys. This is Chris Vella, and I wanted to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity just to present a brief timeline of the Crosstown Expressway, just as kind of the beginnings of the authority itself and also the project. I want to ask you all just to bear in mind 3 points while I go through this. The interstate system needed the expressway system and vice versa, 1. 2, you can't have a large highway without urban renewal. And 3, it's not so much placing blame on a specific person or agency. It's rather like recognizing what Beth Alden touched upon, the pattern of discrimination and public policy and transportation. And what can we do to really look into that and prevent it in the future? Next slide. This slide are the founders of the Expressway project. I'm going to go ahead and start with Sam Gibbons. He was really concerned, the OCC, to get the adoption of THEA. Now, I just want to point out here that the Expressway system came out, the idea of it came out before even the interstate system was built. So a lot of people recognized that there was a flaw in that and that it wasn't going to be enough to relieve I-4. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you see there is some images of public housing and also an interior shot of an older home that was deemed as a slum. I just want to let everybody know that over 10,000 people have been displaced between the Expressway Authority, urban renewal, and also the Tampa Interstate. It could be more. It's really hard to like tag, but I got these quotes that you're seeing in this presentation directly from the media, people who worked and interfaced with the county or the state board. It was important at this time to realize that there was no city or comprehensive plan, which is why the state took opportunity to say, well, we need to compete with other cities, so let's go ahead and renew and build properly and have more of a population boost and of course have an expressway to get in and get out of the city quickly. Next slide, please. Can you go ahead and proceed to the next one? We're going to go back to that one. So it'll be just the one right after that one. Sorry. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, there we go. Okay. All right. So I wanted to start with this photo first, and then we'll talk about the map that you saw. With the removal of the garrison in Dobyville, we saw really tragic effects. One, I know we have a school board member on the board. We saw a lot of relocations and demolitions of schoolhouses for Blacks. And I kind of put there a note of the amount, which is 1,100 Negro families, included school children, will be displaced by the Expressway. So that's the actual quote from the article. Of course, it was much more than that. This was kind of in the beginning when they were thinking about what they had to do in terms of make way for the Expressway system. It's important to note that after like the garrison or parts of Ybor or Dobyville was removed, there was no local improvements. The slums are basically cleared. Some land was, turned over to industrial, and some land remained industrial. And the reason for that is it would allow easier transition to allow an expressway to go through. Now, if we can go back to the previous slide, we'll look at that map. Perfect. Okay, so above is Dobyville, which is kind of roughly like the Hyde Park area in North Hyde Park. And then below is the garrison, which is where Water Street is being built on today. It is estimated with eminent domain and the urban core and Dobyville, Garrison, all these urban neighborhoods, about 300 acres of minority neighborhoods have been removed for this project. If you do combine that with the interstate, again, the interstate needed the expressway to relieve itself, we're probably talking about thousands of acreage. And the white boxes that you see on the map are just the rough regions of the two historic Black towns. And I wanted, again, I'm just trying to use that as a reference of Water Street. And then for Dobyville, it's between Albany, Willow, Northby, and Swan Avenue. Next slide. And then we'll jump to the one after that one. Yeah. Okay, so if you can go past that one, sorry. Thank you. Okay. No more flip-flopping after this. Okay, so this slide shows the business impacts that occurred in the 1960s. I put a price tag there. That's not the 1960s price. That's just for the 4 miles with inflation. I don't really know like the true value, but it's estimated between $280 to $370 million, which is a lot of money back then. But this slide shows the impacts to general offices, mechanics, building supply, insurance, and retail establishments on Nebraska Avenue. So a lot of these folks got pushed out. A lot of them were not just whites. There were also like Italians, Hispanics, and also Black owned. Milo Smith and Associates in 1961, this is important, they were like hired to basically go through 93 neighborhoods and just say, well, we're going to have to demo this or we're going to have to fix this one. So they kind of categorized the way how Tampa would be demoed, and then from there coordinated with the Expressway system, and then you saw the damages and heard the figures on that. And let's see here. THEA, I want to make sure I got this right. THEA was actually founded around this time in 1963 through legislation. The reason why THEA had to be founded is because the state had to have the ability to finance its own expressway system. Or I'm sorry, the county has to have this own way without federal support per se to fund expressway system. Next slide. The gentleman to your left is actually a county planner. He said the quote to the right, which is really on point. His concerns were after the Tampa interstate was built, downtown interchange and so forth, that neighborhoods were reduced really to small parts, and that it was just unfeasible to raise a family there with all the cars going by and the noise. You just had no amenities. And it's too bad that we didn't quite took his advice in the future as we moved forward. Now, I wanted to talk about the population statistic. Right now, our population is under 400,000. And you can see there in the bottom, I mentioned that with the roadway agency and also the county, they were projecting up to 500,000 by 1980. So this is really problematic because we do see, a lot of ill projections in this time. And of course, I remember Commissioner Kemp mentioning long ago that we had that same issue with the Veterans Expressway, which was part of the plan of THEA. Okay, next slide, please. You see photos of two activists. One is Jim Fair. Like he did a lot of lawsuits to the county, but both of them had a good point. They were concerned about public knowledge of the financing and welfare of this expressway system. So there wasn't really a true public understanding which leg would be built first for the expressway system, how it would be financed. There was a big public outcry. Some people wanted it into Intraday, some people wanted it to Brandon. So it just seemed like it didn't make sense that we had $40 to $50 million at the time tied up into a plan that was unknown. Both of these gentlemen felt like, well, we need to reinvest in our neighborhoods and fix our local streets because those are the areas where we're having problems and also flooding. Unfortunately, both of these gentlemen were unsuccessful, but they led a very successful protest campaign to at least to get THEA to discuss more options with the project and to share more information. Next slide. And I talked about the demolition. So this is a couple of photos here. One of the actions that THEA took kind of prior to the beginning of the 70s was to move these studies a little bit faster. And this kind of threw protesters off the curve. And so you saw the demo happening around you, you heard about the project, and then you know it's being accelerated. And of course, like you have a lot of anxiety as a business owner, homeowner, or just someone who's concerned about their community system or community area. In 1976 is when the crosstown becomes operational, and that's basically from Gandy to the downtown area. Next slide. This slide talks about the subsidies that had to go into the expressway system. Actually, it's, let's see here, I put a big quote in the middle, and it said the county contributed $14.8 million in gas tax to keep operation and float. So remember, like when I was talking about the beginning, like we had to have legislation to support a private expressway, if you will, for the county. There wasn't really that much thought put into it, and of course we ran into a deficit with that. As we demoed a lot of areas in the 60s, 70s, 40s highway projects, we had population decline, so that actually hurt a lot of the total revenue. There wasn't that much development. Every month was costing the county about $1 million at that time, and we could only pay anywhere between half to 3/4. So we we heavily subsidize this, and even the city of Tampa put some cash up front to get this going. Next slide, please. I just wanted to bring up the slide because I just wanted to show you one of the earlier maps of how the expressway system would be routed. It looks like it wanted to be kind of like a blob, like a beltway, if you will, to go around the area. But a lot of these lines are going east and further west. There were more rural areas. Right now, there's a lot of gridlock there, and unfortunately, a lot of sprawling suburbia. So a lot of residents were concerned about that. Some of these lines obviously have changed or weren't fully realized. But the big issue was, why do we want to have a duplicate system? If we have a road going north, then why do we have to keep on building more separate roads going north and tolling them, especially when, the non-toll roads are free? There was an interesting group at this time in the 80s called Ouch, and I really liked their name. But they were called Organized Siege by the Crosstown Hookup, and kudos to them. They were opposed to any further eastern development. This would be beyond 301, going all the way out to the East Coast. Next slide, please. Okay, on this one, it's my last slide, and I'm showing a picture of the connector, which is right now between the Expressway and the Tampa Interstate. Remember when I mentioned that the Expressway had to relieve I-4? Well, now it looks like the Expressway is bleeding into I-4, and I-4 traffic is bleeding onto the Expressway, like in this really key exchange here. And this was conceived all the way up in the early 80s, and it was part of the original 1996 plan for the Tampa Interstate study. One of the concerns right now, of course, with the PD&E and THEA just looking to expand the roadway system is the current interchange at the connector. If you look kind of at the bottom in the modern photo there, you will see incomplete ramps. So one of the things is, like, if you turn on a spigot of cars in one section, it's only going to bring up demand and traffic in the other. So my concerns are that this could be expanded in the future. This is in East Seaboard. This is also in part of East Tampa. If you turn on the spigot there and take more properties, you're also going to, in turn on the spigot at the Malfunction Junction and also other interchanges. So you're making the problem worse by inducing demand. This is kind of like a preemptive direction that we're going towards. And this is why we just need to kind of stop, reflect back, and say, is this really the right plan? Is this the way we should move forward? And then before I close, we know that the state dominated a lot of our planning because we didn't have any comprehensive plans, but with THEA, they're looking to consolidate under State Bill 1660 and House Bill 1283 to become a larger organization to oversee Citrus, Hernando, Manatee, Pasco, Pinellas, and Polk County. So it's almost like having another Tabarda, if you will. And I feel like what happened between the 60s to now, we've lost a lot of the local voice to actually make the money go into transit and neighborhood local improvements. And in the case of what we're seeing here with, like, the slums removal and the relocation of communities, not being fair. And so I just wanted you all to hear this story, this timeline. I really appreciate it. I hope that maybe this kind of spurs up some discussion and it can lead elsewhere to a more dedicated study. I can tell you right now that this was probably the 2 days worth of just kind of sifting through actual articles and photos. There's probably like months of stuff to go through from a planning aspect to transportation. I only made a light scratch on this, and I know Dan and Josh have put a lot of effort into what they did, but there's still a lot of data out there to kind of reflect back and say, hey, is this the right direction that we're going? Should we go this way? With that said, I'll just go ahead and close this up, and I'll entertain any questions y'all have.
Commissioner Kemp.
I just wanted to thank you for the work and putting that together. It was very interesting, and there was a lot of information, and just to kind of see some of that history. That, for instance, the population projections, which to this day are, not grossly off, 507,000 in 1980. We have about 400,000 now. But also to, and I, would imagine that the population and the economic decline in impacts of the kinds of destruction that was done both through what they called renewal,
Right.
but as well through the highway building that was done in the heart of communities. And the quotes by the social worker, the subsidizing in those early years, because, when I've always known about the cost of the roads in general anyway, and the subsidies that are done there. Some people believing that gas prices or gas pay the whole cost, and that's just never been the case, but it's just very interesting to see this early history. So it was a very good presentation. I can tell that you worked a long time on it and good research. Thank you for putting that together.
For that. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to commend Beth and your team for and the work that's being done on this. It's not easy to have a conversation like this and to admit some of the things that took place that caused some impact and continuing to do so with lower opportunity people. It's hard for me to even say it. But to that point, we don't get better until we acknowledge, and this is an acknowledgement of work to be done, and keeping in mind that every decision we make needs to be with this in mind. And I just applaud the work. I'm saddened by it, but I do applaud the work and acknowledge that it needs to be said, and it needs to be experienced, it needs to be felt, and it needs to be in our face. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. I see that Commissioner Smith has her hand raised.
Right, and I just want to, thank you. I want to pile on to what Commissioner Kemp and Director Williams has said. Also, I feel that our community is having these hard discussions, and Mr. Vela, I know you're a big part of that, and I appreciate the work that you are doing as a community advocate and putting this together and dare I say, following in Jim Fair's footsteps. That's a compliment. That's a compliment in my book. But we need those voices. I've been that voice myself sometimes, and I think it's really important. But I do feel optimistic that our MPO and our planners are looking at things in this context of history, thanks to the citizens' voices in part. And I also was struck by the population projections because in my career as a community activist, I have found these population projections often used to justify sprawl. Besides the transportation issues that you were talking about, these enormous population projections saying, well, these people are coming, they're going to be raining down on us. We've got to put them somewhere. Let's put them in the rural area, as if it's, as if these numbers are a force of nature and we've got to build highways and expand the urban service area and allow sprawl to have them flood into them. And a lot of, often they are inaccurate, and even if accurate, not a justification for, we have to change our framework of thinking, not how many people are coming and where are we going to put them, but where do we want to direct people, cars, bicycles, pedestrians, as well as housing and affordable housing and transit-oriented development together. So thank you very much for the very provocative presentation.
Thanks.
All right, I don't see any other hands. We have one more presentation, I believe, from the Expressway Authority. So, Ms. Alden, I'll go back to you for that.
Well, I'll just be turning it over to Bob Fry with the Expressway Authority, and I do also want to thank Chris Vella for his time. He is a citizen volunteer, and I really appreciate the time that he spent on this.
Thanks.
Oh, there we are. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present on the Selmon East. And Mr. Villa, thank you very much for the education. We appreciate it. And I think that it's really a great way to come into where we're at right now with this project in the term PD&E, the Project Development and Environmental. A lot of the decisions that were made back then resulted in why we have a PD&E today, why we look at cultural and the cultural aesthetics, meet with the homeowners association, and have to have the large public involvement piece that we do on these projects to make sure that those things don't happen again, and that we do take into account what's happening in the neighborhoods and what the neighborhoods want, and that the road is serving the population. So thank you very much. I think that's a really good up for where we're at. So we are at the PD&E process right now. A couple things that were mentioned about THEA that I think that we need to talk about. First is we are an implementation agency. We are not a planning agency. That means that in areas that we are allowed to work, we have to be asked to work. That request comes from the county, from the DOT, from the jurisdiction for us to do something. And I think that's important, especially when you were mentioning the House bills and what's going on in the legislature right now. So I just wanted to put that out there, that that just allows us to talk to those local governments and to see what needs they have that maybe we can help. It does not mean that we have the power to go and do anything there without being invited. So THEA PD&Es, we have 4 of them going on right now. I'm going to specifically talk about the Selmon South. THEA, we are a regional facility. Part is at first mile, last mile, and the city with the city on the first mile, last mile. We fit into the regional piece, and how do we get the trips in and out of the city most effectively and safely to make sure that we're able to continue the growth and the city accomplishes its goals. So for the next slide, we'll go into the Selmon South here real quick. As you can see, PD&E studies website at selmonstudies.com. All of our studies that we have are always available 24/7 on the website, and please feel free to go in there and ask any questions or anything that you'd like to see of what we're doing and what we're planning. We make sure they are up to date as much as possible. Next slide. South Selmon PD&E, this project basically goes from Willow down to Himes. This is right through the city and down into where the new into the Gandy area and the Selmon Connector Gandy and the Gandy Bridge. We had our alternatives meeting in September of 2020, and we had our public hearing on February 25th, 21. Those were a bit challenging with COVID, but we soldiered through and we were able to get through. The Selmon South PD&E has its own website specifically for this project, so feel free to go in and take a look at that as well. Next slide. This is the public outreach snapshot, and as I mentioned earlier with the PD&E, why we use this process is we meet with the homeowners associations to find out what it is that they want, and we tell them what our project is. We have virtual town halls and public hearings. We meet with the elected officials individually and have done that throughout this process to make sure we understand what it is that this particular area is looking for, what it needs to be, and how it fits in to the city as a whole. And we work with the city a lot to determine where the city wants to go. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about right now is how we, as an agency, I mean, we live here too, and we love Tampa and Clearwater High, class of '81. We want to make this area as, as beautiful and as good as possible for our families. So you're going to see a lot of things on how we help meet those types of goals. Next slide, please. So this is the PD&E, and where are we today? When are 6 lanes needed? Well, right now in the urban area, they need it today. We are at a point where we are seeing, extreme level of service and slow down. By 2027, we will see that we need 6 lanes for the whole portion of the Selmon. And Mr. Vila mentioned something earlier that I think is a really interesting concept, and that's induced trips. Induced trips, these are trips that people are literally in their cars taking as part of their lives. People don't get up in the morning and say, put the kids in and let's go at 7:30 and ride the interstate on the new lanes. They're going somewhere. So we feel that these trips are people living their lives and giving them the most mobility options they have to make the choices they need to live their life as successfully and to the fullest as possible. So those trips we're looking at in 2027, each one of those trips, when we see those volumes, that's a person that has a place they want to go to and a place they need to get to. And we're just offering an option. When are 8 lanes needed? We're looking here right now, 2033, we're seeing that in the urban area, and then 2046. And with the 8 lane, we see that the things will move in a more efficient manner. Next slide, please. So the preferred alternative is looking at adding a third lane in each direction in the interim configuration. And we're looking at our 2033 that we would need to put a 4th lane in each direction at that time. We like this configuration as a preferred alternative because it allows us to add the capacity that's needed when it's needed. So we will be looking at, in the 2030 timeframe, on that 8 lane. Is it needed? We are not going to build something that's not needed if it shows that it's not needed at that time, and we will then wait and it will go out further. And right now we are in the middle of sort of a paradigm shift in transportation. We're seeing a lot of new transportation modes coming in and different chances, and we're FIA and DOT and the city, we're all out in the lead, believe it or not, nationwide on experimenting to see what we can investigate to see who solves our problems the best. So we'll see what happens in 2030. But right now, we're looking at a total of 6 lanes for the interim configuration and then 4 lanes in each direction for the ultimate. Next slide, please. These are the cross sections we're looking at. As you can see, we're building to the outside. The reason we're doing that is we want to touch it once. This allows us to touch it, go out and disturb the area only once, put in the noise walls and the lanes, and then come back in the ultimate condition in the 2030s. And if look at doing it to the inside. That way the residents aren't disturbed. We don't have to tear down and reconstruct. This was the most efficient means possible for us. And something that the homeowners associations mentioned that they valued was the space between the bridges. They like the sunlight between that, and we're going to try to keep that as long as possible. So that's why we thought that this was a really efficient way to look at this project moving forward. This project will not take any additional right-of-way. This is all done within the existing right-of-way. It will not require anything in additional. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about some of the quality of life and pedestrian safety highlights that we have in this project. We'll start with the noise walls. When we met with the homeowners associations, one of the first things that we heard about was noise. Well, when we did the noise analysis that's part of the PD&E process, there's only select locations that technically required it. But THEA, working in response with the homeowners associations and the people that live along this corridor, we committed to doing the full corridor. So the 2,284 linear feet is what we're required. We're committing to do 43,163 linear feet of noise wall in response to what the homeowners associations want at an additional cost of about $9 million to make sure that we're giving them a product that meets their needs. Pedestrian safety, and this is something I talked about earlier with helping the city meet their goals. And I just want to clarify, Vision Zero is not just a city goal, it's an everybody goal in the transportation industry. We're transportation professionals over 30 years doing this. We want the road to be as safe as possible, and that means all modes of transportation. How do we make it as safe as possible? So we're looking at, with this project, we have 1,300 linear feet of sidewalk that's going to be added. All free flow movements will be removed under traffic and put under traffic signal control, which helps the bike pedestrian at our ramps. When those were designed the first time, things were a little different. Now we're responding to where we are today and what the needs are. Underpass aesthetics, we're going to be adding not only landscaping, but safety and aesthetic lighting to the underpasses in the areas that we already have. And if those of you who have been in the Morrison Gateway, Swan Avenue, when we've worked with the homeowners in the past to make these areas as you know, the way they want them to be, and we'll continue to do that with this project. Next slide, please. The traffic operations, and this goes back to us working with the city. And as I said, we live here. We're part of this community too. In 2046, our preferred alternative is expected to attract 600 to 650 vehicles in the peak direction, peak hour from the local roads, taking them out of the neighborhoods, putting them on the limited access facility where they belong, and letting those people make their trips without having to disturb the neighborhoods. And in 2046, our preferred alternative is expected to draw about 150 vehicles in peak direction, peak hour off of Bayshore Boulevard. We've been working on that with the city now since I've been here in 2012. And that's a huge number there for us to be able to help keep that area and meet the city's goals in that area. When compared to the no build, which would just be leaving it where we're at, we're expecting to see about 579 fewer crashes over the same period with a much higher demand. So we're going to be seeing more people coming through, but it'll be safer. And finally, it's going to reduce the total travel vehicle time by about 3,600 hours. And that's important to people getting to work, getting to daycare. Anybody who's going to daycare and pays that extra minute charge knows what it means to have a route that you can get to where you need to go. So that to us is important. And once again, at DEO, we're big on mobility options. We want to help give as many options as possible for people to get where they need to go the way they feel works best for their families. Next, please. I want to talk a little bit about Vision Zero because we've been talking about this in a long time. We've added at THEA, at the PD&E process, a Vision Zero audit. And this is actually based on the MPO's Vision Zero workshop. We took the mitigation factors that they presented, and we created an audit process to go through on all of our projects and make sure that where do we have the opportunities to put these in and still meet our mission at the same time. And if you go on the Selmon South website, you will see that the audit is complete and is on there for this particular project. And as you can see, we're probably looking at about 8 or 9 of these different mitigation strategies are being implemented along this corridor when we go in and we touch it. At THEA, when we go into a corridor, our goal is to make it better and to make it a better place. And that's not to say other agencies don't do that either. I can only speak for what we control. And we control the corridors we touch. We're going to make them better, safer, and more efficient. Next slide, please. For bicycle pedestrians, which is big, we're looking at enhanced ITS. As Mr. Wagner spoke about earlier, our connected vehicle, we're big on technology. If we're not going to widen roads, then we're going to have to use technology to help make them move more efficiently and safer. So THEA has been a leader in that since the REL, the reversible lanes. We're the first to go all electronic tolling to get those pesky toll lanes out of there where you had to stop every once in a while. So we're continuing that with a connected vehicle and also using ITS technology to give us an idea on when ramp backups are coming, when pedestrians are. We talked about connected vehicle technology. We're using camera analytics to monitor the crosswalks, and it's been in effect at the courthouse right now for quite a while, where we're using that to learn how to do it so we can put it into projects like this. We've committed to high visibility crosswalks and raised medians and pedestrian refuge islands along the corridor access points. Enhanced street lighting and under-deck decorative lighting that we've been asked for. As I mentioned, we fill sidewalk gaps wherever we can find them to help the pedestrians, and we are committed to doing the bike lanes at Euclid and Willow to make sure that that green colored pavement that has been investment of the city will continue, and we'll see where we can enhance it. We work with the city very closely on all of our ramps once we had a preferred alternative to determine what needed to go in there. Next slide, please. For improvements, we're looking at basically signal timing improvements, working with the city and their new signal timing systems that are coming in, how to make them work more efficiently. And as I stated, the removal of the free flow ramps, new traffic signals there, and we've taken out we put in right turn on red restrictions that we'd want to see implemented there, once again, for the pedestrian bicycle people. Next slide, please. These next few slides are one of my favorite slides because this is Vision Zero in action. This is Vision Zero deployed. If you look at what we did and what we're doing, we're adding 625 feet of new sidewalk. We're geometrically changing the ramp coming off at Willow to correct the dangerous situation, increasing the stacking so we don't have high-speed backups that could have happened. We've also worked with modifying the traffic signals, updating and adding pedestrian signals, continuing the bicycles throughout there, and providing three lanes there for that stacking. This is how Vision Zero looks when it's deployed as part of a limited access project. At our ramps, what we do, we come in and we do this. We talk a lot about Vision Zero, and we've talked a lot about it in the past, and mostly we think about it in terms of the urban core. But limited access fills a huge role in our transportation system, and using Vision Zero and Vision Zero concepts on the limited access and at those ramps, I think is just as important as for that. Then again, I'm biased. That's my mission. So we do that. Next slide, please. And this is the same thing at Euclid Avenue and the Selmon ramps. We did the same thing. Added signals, improved the traffic signal system, working with the city, provide new crosswalks, left turn lane from Euclid to help with the traffic flow, and we've added. Added dedicated bike lane markings, traffic signals to get rid of free flows. So all these fit together into not just one of those 30 or so mitigation factors, but a combination to solve the problems to really make that intersection safer. So VIA feels like we like working with the city and the other agencies to solve these. So this is what we've committed to do, and we put this out there, and was also stated at our public hearing. The next slide. The next slides I want to talk about a little bit more about the Selmon system. Mr. Vila mentioned, the system and what it meant and what the goals were when the system was first implemented way back when. Economic input, and this, by the way, was done by University of South Florida Department of Economics. We commissioned them to look at our system to see what does Selmon add to the community. Well, 1.6 billion in cumulative value in local and state gross domestic product can be attributed. 15,000 jobs of high impact industry sectors. Increased business growth, 13%. Property values are 20% higher residential within 1 mile of half mile on either side of Selmon. 9% higher growth in commercial properties, and 48 million in added property tax revenues from the properties that come off there. So the benefits extend to all the travelers in Hillsborough County. And this next, we also have, if you look at the second piece there, 6 million in reduced environmental impact from CO2. And that's using the same formulas that the USDOT uses to determine with global warming where our problems are. How do we make it better? It's the same calculations. This project will help make that better, and the Selmon does too, by helping move traffic better, and congestion equals more CO2, so we try to keep those trips moving. Next slide, please. This is a really interesting one because it's the annual user benefits slide, and the dark blue are basically the average time savings, who gets the most benefit from the Selmon. It's pretty much, if you look at Tampa, South Tampa, and that area down to south, that's pretty much where our customer base is and who's receiving the most, as opposed to it being a regional or Pinellas or out to other counties. That's based on data from University of South Florida that we hired, and the travel time savings that we're able to show in millions of dollars per year in savings. So I think this is an interesting slide. I always like this one. Next slide, please. I'm going to close with one thing, going back to when the Selmon started and what they were looking at. This is Meridian Avenue in 2006, and it's something to keep in mind here is this is after the 1990s, which is still the largest economic boom in the history of the United States. This is where we were. Next slide, please. This is 2015 after the reversible lane segments has opened. And I'm not saying that that roadway is the total cause. There's a lot of credit that needs to go to the city, private development, the port. But that's what's so great about it. All these agencies are working together, and transportation is a huge part of it, and access helps with growth. Meridian Avenue is 0.8 of a mile. We have 6 signalized crossings for pedestrians. 15 feet on either side, we have sidewalks. We've extended all of our medians across, provided refuges, and worked with the city on the signal timing as well. So that commitment to growth, plus the safety and accomplishing the city's goals. Next slide, please. Take us to where we are today, and we're starting to see that elevation, that density that we need for that transit-oriented development and the height and the transit that we want. I can't wait till 2025 slide, because I want to see what's coming in there next on the other side when we develop it, and maybe that will help us get closer to those goals. So none of these projects are in an island. They work together. We all work together as agencies to make this better for transportation. And the PD&E process we're using right now makes sure that decisions that were made, like we saw in Mr. Vila's presentation, don't happen again. But we are committed at THEA to working with the city and the region to accomplish its goals in the safest way possible. And I think we have a pretty good track record. And I'd like to open up to any questions, and we'd love to, give you guys a tour. We have the Gandhi is opening up this month, which is beautiful if you take a ride down there. Once again, I'm biased. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fry, thank you very much. Before I ask for any questions or board discussion, let me just remind everyone that it is 5 after 12, and we are going over our time. But if there is anyone that wants to speak or has anything to say, now would be your moment. Commissioner Kemp.
Sorry to keep it, but do we get traffic counts? I'm just really interested on that because I hear about the congestion, but whenever I've driven it, the only congestion seems to be at the exits where traffic is piled up because there's a lot of capacity already. But in the regular roadways, it just doesn't seem to be a problem, even at rush hours, in my experience, which is limited.
We definitely do maintain traffic counts, and actually our counts with the toll, the toll facility, the gantries out there, we're able to track very closely what is out there. Believe me, we would not be going forward to recommend having to do a project of this size unless we saw the need, and that's part of going through these processes. But yeah, I can get you whatever traffic count you want. COVID, we reduced volumes during that naturally. Interesting part of even during COVID, when we ran the reversible lanes all the way outbound totally during the shutdown, we were still seeing 140 of our connected vehicles down in the study area that people were weaving their way down there. We figured they must be essential workers or something. But this path, people getting down there, even during the lockdown, we were still seeing people migrating to the downtown. I will get you whatever traffic counts that you need, and we do have the design traffic report is completed for the study that's based on that. Something else to keep in mind about our projects, for us to go forward, because we're 100% funded through THEA and bonds, we will do an investment grade traffic study, and that's the study that you take to Wall Street and they invest money, bond issues off of it. So we will do a deep dive. For example, when we did the Gandhi extension down there, we did an additional 82 counts to make sure that model was as accurate as possible and that they would sign off on it. So that's another piece of this puzzle for THEA anyway when we go forward, that not only do we have the PD&E to go forward, but we have an investment grade traffic study that we will go through. And for us to lend the money to build it, it's gonna be about as airtight as you can get in this industry.
Thank you. I'd like to get those traffic counts. That would be good. Thank you for the explanation. I'll try and be really fast about these questions. But I guess with the expressway extension, the elevated expressway, the one-way, I'm not getting the wording right now, but it's over, as I understand it, there's capacity, excess capacity on that going out to Brandon for the next 50 years or so. That's about accurate?
I don't think I would say that.
Yes, actually, I wouldn't say there's capacity for the next 50 years, but we're in the middle right now of a slip ramp project that will allow people to use that and then come back down onto the Selmon and continue their trip, which will also reduce the number of people who want to cut through downtown. So we're really looking forward to that. That will be out at I-75 and at the I-4 connector. We're working with District 7 on that right now, and that's actually moving forward. But yes, when we identified that in our Selmon East PD&E project, and we got that project out already.
Right. And then finally, is there any thought to, I mean, I don't know how, the bay to bay exit, to me, the steep, sharp drop, and I think, there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of community input about how dangerous and unwalkable bay to bay is with regards to, and I see it as a real problem, the way that the Expressway drops off there in this steep drop and puts traffic onto this road, which I think is an inappropriate place. I'm not an engineer, but it just seems to me to discontinue, because we've been talking about limited access, which I think is great. That's what I think these should be. To discontinue that exit ramp as part of any study and put it onto something like Dale Mabry that can really handle the traffic, and then the traffic could go within the neighborhoods in a way that makes sense, rather than being dropped off from the Selmon onto Bay to Bay. So I'm just, is there anything with regards to looking at that?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, if we've been working with the city, and they're working on, I guess, the north side, and we've actually just commissioned, as part of our push button miscellaneous planning and design contract, to work with the south side residents on putting together a land use and a concept plan in there on how we do make that area. It's actually on our board agenda right now, and it will be approved this month. So we should be working forward with that. We've been working with Randy Goers at the city on the other side, and yeah, we agree. We want to make that area as safe as possible, and we're going to work with them on figuring out what the residents need and what the city wants to do and how THEA can play a role.
And were you addressing, would that take the exit that's on the north side and put it on the south? Is that what you're saying, or are you just talking about a second exit on the south?
No, ma'am, I'm just talking right now about working with the city to study. I don't think anybody's reached the point of coming to any conclusions whatsoever on what's going to happen there. But as I said, we are committed to working with the city, and we do have a contract that THEA is going to be doing with hiring to work with the residents in the area to get that completed. So I should have more to report back probably in a year. But right now, that's where we're at. Right now, I'm going through procurement, trying to get it done, and it is on this month's board agenda. So we should be going by June 1st.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Alden.
The critical items are listed on the agenda. Thank you so much for staying late today.
Okay, and seeing no more business, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
your
attention.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.